said it.
He said move.
Yeah. He said just remember the language. No, I'm fine.
I'm on board. More conciseness.
Yes. These chairs are too big for me.
So we do think Gary will be here though?
No,
Gary's
Gary's
not.
not.
Oh, Gary's
Eddie.
not. Okay, then I'm gonna spread.
Actually,
I think we're in. Yeah.
That's too bad. I wish those two were here
Yeah.
tonight.
Misery loves company.
They always have good ideas.
It's like we're in for some misery. Okay, well, it's the appointed hour. We'll welcome you to the Kaysville Planning Commission meeting for May 25th, 2017. And we'll start with item number 1, which is the approval of the minutes from the April 27th meeting.
I move that, to make a motion to approve the minutes from April 27th, 2017.
Second. Aye.
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 Aye. Great. Next is item 2A, conditional use permit for major home occupation B carpentry business at 30 North, 760 East for David and Raquel Couch.
As an introduction to the item, the request for the home business just at the far end of Center Street, essentially at 760 East, 30 North. You can see the photo there on our screen or in your packets. The applicants requested to do carpentry from the home. Essentially, almost everything takes place off the site from my understanding of the business. But they will have tools and such on the property that are stored within the applicant's vehicle and a trailer. Having met with her and with them discussed the proposal, looking at the site, staff didn't have any recommendations for additional conditions on it and has recommended approval as proposed. There's a zillion people here tonight. I believe they are here if you have questions of them, and I'd be happy to take any myself.
Okay. Any discussion? Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this item? Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to repeat what he said? All right, I'll
Okay.
let you try that.
It is, well, there we go. So the proposal for this, just at the far east end of Center Street, is for a home business license, a home occupation for a carpentry business. The proposal, essentially they do paperwork out of the home and they have a vehicle and a trailer where their tools and things are stored. Almost all of the work takes place off-site on a job site doing installs and such for carpentry purposes. Our review from staff in my meeting with them and with the understanding of the business, we're recommending approval without the need for additional conditions.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody here wishing to address this item?
Can we ask just a few more questions?
Why don't you come up?
Okay.
State your name, if you would. Thank you.
All right. Louise Nelson, and I live just across the street. So most of his tools and everything are going to be stored in the trailer? There's not going to be a building built?
Currently, they haven't proposed a building. I think long-term that they might like to do a detached garage or something for a little workshop, mostly for personal needs, but they said occasionally the tools might be over in that building.
Well, my concern is bringing extra traffic into the area because we have so many children in that area. There are, on that little dead end right there, we have 31 children. And then on that street there are probably at least another 20 kids. And so I think any additional traffic or anything like that within neighborhood because of the business would definitely be proper. And I think basically it's a neighborhood. It's not a business.
From a historical standpoint, major home occupations such as this, something like this, isn't going to generate a large traffic inflow. The main reason why I think he's going to be using it, from what I understand, what I've read and what I hear, is that this is going to be used as a home office type of thing. I doubt if there's going to be people coming in and out of his house. I mean, he may be leaving from there, but that would be different from what? From nothing, right? I mean, he's still probably leaving and coming and going and stuff, right? So I mean, strictly from my, well, I mean, I think it's probably shared, but I don't see something along these lines generating a large amount of traffic in the neighborhood. So
Those were questions that we had.
well, that's fine.
We were just wanting to get a little more information to know exactly
Right.
what was going on here, so.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
So Lyle, just to clarify, your understanding from the applicant is that there will be no customers and/or deliveries coming and going from the site other than him himself living there. Is that accurate?
Yeah, essentially, if they're doing finish trim or something, they go to a person's home, look at what they need, take measurements there, have samples of what they can do, and then most of the work's done off-site on the property. Phone calls and paperwork at the home, I imagine there could potentially be an occasional person that comes over to see the work being taken place, but almost everything has to take place off-site to take those measurements and get things to fit to do an appropriate bid.
Thank you.
So I think the concern is a valid one in the sense that that's the type of thing we look at with a business conditional use like this. It sounds to me like there isn't going to be a concern that warrants conditions to address it.
Generally, from a staff perspective on this type of business, where we run into the most concerns in a carpenter contractor type business is equipment. And so if that tends to be taken care of and under control and stored appropriately, traffic, at least that I've been made aware of, has not been an issue on our other businesses in town.
And the current zoning addresses that too. Is that all right? Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And they are conditional use permits, so if there are problems, then the staff gets made aware of it, it comes back up before the planning commission, and we can reconsider depending on how things go. Would you like to say something?
It's our business, so I just wanted to get up and address the concern. We don't have any clients come to our home. Everything is done off-site. Oh, I'm sorry, everything is done off-site. So my husband, basically, he goes to the client's home and installs the wood. The only thing that's really, that's gonna be done at the house is the paperwork and whatever phone calls, but no clients ever come to the home. And I totally get her concerns because I have 2 children of my own, and there would be 2 kids in that neighborhood, and there would be, no traffic whatsoever generated from that, other than going from to and from work. So no clients ever come to the home.
Okay, thank you. She said basically that they don't have customers or clients come to their home.
I will say though that microphone, I've tried to watch council and you can't hear who's talking at the microphone. So, but it breaks in and out. I don't know if it can be fixed, or the next person that comes up there, see if it's on. Like, that would be the start, I guess.
Brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? I'll take a motion.
I'll move that we grant a conditional, major home occupation B conditional use permit for carpentry for Miss Raquel Couch at 30 North, 760 East.
Second.
Aye.
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 Okay, good luck. Next one is item 2B, esthetician at 439 West Creekside Lane for Rachel Engstrom.
Ms. Engstrom actually previously received a conditional use permit for the same business at a different address. She's moved but was wise enough to stay within Kaysville, but just needs the conditional use to go with her to the new location. Based on the history of the business, the other location, no complaints or concerns were ever brought up to staff. Again, having discussed the business with her by appointment, client would come over for the services that she offers, and based on that history, the staff didn't have any concerns, additional conditions as part of our recommendation, and we are recommending approval.
Thank you. anyone here that would like to address this item from the public? Okay. Any discussion amongst the commission?
No.
You ready for a
All
motion?
right, well, let's take a motion.
I move that we grant a conditional use permit for major home occupation B esthetician for Rachel Engstrom and Scott and Holly Jessup at 439 West Creekside Lane.
Second.
Aye.
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 Great, thank you. Good luck. All right, next is conditional use for major home occupation B, swimming lessons for Pam Hunsaker at 352 South, 1000 West.
Okay. This is another application that the Planning Commission has seen in the past. The Hunsakers applied for a conditional use permit to teach swimming lessons at their property. You can see here on the map at 1000 West, or Wits End, I believe is the other name for the subdivision and street. Previously, they got the conditional use permit in place, thought that was the only and final approval, so didn't finish and pursue the business licensing. They have since been doing the swimming lessons, and then recently discovered that they also need a business license to go with it. So we're having them come back before the Planning Commission, make sure there aren't issues with it, and then we'll continue with them as staff to wrap up the business license. It's a little unique. We do have homes that do it around town where they'll take in groups, so you have one person with several kids. The Hunsakers do it more one-on-one type instruction. Occasionally there might be more than one student per instructor if you have a sibling or something that comes along. But based on that, with the history of it, again, not having any concerns or complaints from the previous use to my knowledge, and the nature of the business and how it operates, staff's recommending approval of the conditional use. But still placing a limit to no more than 8 students at a time is our recommendation, based on the requirements of the ordinance.
Thank you. Anyone here to speak on this item?
I'm here, I'm Pam Hunsaker.
Okay.
I would just clarify that we have no more than 4 students at any given time because it's all one-on-one instruction.
And you won't need more than 4?
No, 5 maximum if sometimes there's 2 kids that need to have a lesson at the same time, but our operation since 2011 has been one-on-one instructing, so it's 1 teacher, 1 student. And often we have 1 car because it might be 1 family, sometimes there's a couple of cars, but our neighbors have been really supportive.
So would you not have a problem if we limited it to 5 students instead of 8 students?
That's not a problem.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, my only concern was if they had 8 different students with 8 cars.
In the cul-de-sac?
Yeah, and it's,
That doesn't seem to be the issue, though.
but if we can limit it to 5, that makes it even better. Plus, it's probably not 5 cars, it's probably,
Yeah. I don't have an issue with limiting the number.
okay.
I mean, I don't have an issue thinking that I need to limit the number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make a motion. I move that we grant a conditional use permit for a major home occupation B swimming lessons to Pam Hunsaker, 352 South, 1000 West, with the stipulation that they have no more than 5 students at a time.
I'll second.
Aye.
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 Aye. Great, good luck with that. Next, a conditional use permit for farm animals at 207 South, 200 East for Rustin Jessen.
Okay, so the application here before us on the corner of 200 South, 200 East. The property's just shy of a quarter acre, about 0.24 acres, 10,450 square feet. Based on the size, they could have as many as 6 small animals such as hens on site. In this instance, the applicant currently has the coop and the animals on the property, and as often occurs, they found out after the fact that they needed the permits to do it. But that allowed me, I have visited the property, seen the animals, and everything seems to be in pretty good order. Visiting with the applicant and having taken a look at things, staff's recommending approval with that limit based on the property size without additional conditions.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone here to speak on this item? All right, move to commission discussion. Oh. Wait a second.
My name's Dean Wall. I live on 300 East, which is just past that parking area there. I have rats bigger than the cats that are walking around there. I don't have a way to check and see if it's on.
Is your idea?
There you go. The problem that I have is adding more animals in there. Like I say, I have rats that I don't know how to get rid of because the people that lived in the place before I did, they had chickens, and I can't get rid of the rats.
In your place where you
Yeah.
now live?
And I live just right here, 300 East. And let me tell you, the rats, I hate to put out rat killer stuff because there's a lot of stray cats. So I don't know how to get rid of them, but you know, the rats for some reason come along with the chickens. If there's too many, like I say, I just can't get rid of them. And I don't know of a way, if somebody could give me an idea of a way that I get rid of them without killing other animals, I'd love to hear it. But putting more animals there, I disagree with. Okay, just basically for that reason. Thank you.
Thank you. We've had some discussion about rats and the cleanliness of the coop. And I can't remember what was said, but it seemed like it was that if the coop's well-maintained and clean, then the rats don't become a problem there. Is that?
Yeah, I can't claim to be the resident expert, but what I've heard is if feed is left out, animals such as rats and rodents will come find that. So if things are generally maintained and kept clean, I think that helps. It could be the straw or some of the other things that sometimes are used in coop. Could be just places for the rodents to burrow. So again, if it's replaced or kept tidy, I think that just helps control the problem. I don't know that the animals themselves directly bring them on, but those types of elements that come with it, if not taken care of, can potentially have that impact, I think.
Did you have something?
Yeah, I'm Rustin Jessen, I'm the applicant. The coop is fully enclosed, so as far as other animals getting in, they would have to be very small. We have a cat who's a very effective mouser. We've never had any rat problems, and like he said, the chickens have actually been on the premises for a while. I was reading through the city code and realized we needed a permit, and so I filed it. And so but they've been here for a while. We haven't seen any uptick in mice, rats, or really anything. The feed and the straw are both kept in closed containers in the garage. As far as addressing all that, we're really cognizant of the neighbors and any effect we might have on them. So we keep a tight lid on things in the backyard, and the yard is fully fenced and the coop is completely enclosed.
Great, that sounds great.
Have you had any complaints from your neighbors in the past?
No, I have one neighbor who would like more eggs than I can supply.
And I appreciate you coming here now that you realize that you need a conditional use. How long has it been, though, that you've had them?
Let's see, we got him as little check, I think about 5 or 6 months, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the fact that Mr. Wall's property that he's living in, where he's seeing the rats, had the chickens there, and we may not know what the conditions were with those owners of chickens is kind of an unknown factor here.
Yeah, plus the distance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any further discussion?
Maybe just to say, just to clarify too, that given the space that properties have, the city ordinances allow chickens on properties of certain sizes and then certain numbers. And so if they are maintained and cared for and the property is not becoming a nuisance, then you can't have roosters, but you can have chickens. And so it's not really up for us to change that.
Well, and I think it's important to remember that if there are problems, again, like I said in the previous item, this is a conditional use permit, and so if we don't feel like the the code's being respected or there's problems that we can't take care of, then we can revoke the conditional use permit. So that's a process that, you know, we need to be cognizant of because it's a way to remedy problems that come up.
Agreed.
Ready for a motion?
Say-
Oh, sorry.
I'm not being negative against him, okay? If he's got chickens and they haven't been a problem and he keeps them well cooped, I don't have a problem with that. It's just where I live, I have rats. And like I say, they're as big as the cats that roam around there. And
Need bigger cats, maybe.
no, they're rats.
Maybe you need your own cat now, from a farm.
Well,
It's been
I
taught
think
to
they're
mouse.
too big for the cats to go after, so. But
Oh.
that's my only concern. I'm not saying anything against him. If he's
Right.
had them
Yeah.
and he keeps them well cooped, I don't have a problem with that. It's just,
No.
I know how, if it's not kept right, how it can turn out.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Type of thing.
Yeah.
I'll move that we grant a conditional use permit for farm animals for Mr. Rustin Jensen at 207 South, 200 East.
I'll second the motion.
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right, next item is conditional use permit for farm animals, Carol Harrison at 616 Cherrywood Drive.
Okay, so again, another application for our popular chickens that we see in town frequently. This property is slightly smaller than the last here off of Cherrywood Drive. It's 0.19 acres in size, so just over the 8,000 square feet that we require in order to have chickens. The applicant could have as many as 5 animals on site. In this particular situation, they don't have the hens yet, so they're getting things in place with the expectation that they're en route. They put them towards the back south end of the property in the backyard. And I believe their anticipation is that they would have 2 of them. And having taken a look at the yards enclosed, they're preparing a coop to be in place. With that, staff has recommended approval with those conditions existing on site.
Thank you. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this item? Okay. Move to discussion amongst the commission. Is there anything to discuss?
So there's already a coop, but was that from a previous owner and they're just wanting to bring new chickens on or something?
The story on this one, and if the applicant's here, she'll correct me. Maybe I'll let her tell it. They're coming en route with family from somewhere. So
Yeah, we've got 2 chickens, and they actually arrived today.
Could you state your name, please?
Carol Harrison.
Thank you.
And they came from Hawaii. They are our grandson's pets. He is autistic, and these are extremely important to him. And like I said, they just arrived today. He is just retiring from the Army after 23 years and is looking to locate in Kaysville. And so they're going to be with us for a while. So this is just a temporary thing until they find a place.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Take a motion.
I move we grant a conditional use permit for farm animals for Carol Harrison at 616 Cherrywood Drive.
Second.
Aye.
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 Okay. Moving out of farm animals into cell towers. Nope.
one more farm.
Sorry.
Maybe this is the one that everybody's here for.
Yes. Conditional use permit for Brent Subi at 106 West, 575 North.
Okay, so again, another request to keep chickens on site. The property at 0.2 acres, 9,500 square feet is large enough, again, for 5 animals. I met with the applicant, and in the rear of their property, the backyard, we're just setting things up at the time for where the coop would go, and so having looked at that, the yard's fenced in. knowing their plans, everything seemed to be in good shape. He's actually got a little greenhouse type building where the hens will go, so he's just kind of modifying that. So it is technically already on site with a couple changes, ready to house a few hens. Staff's recommending approval of the proposed use without additional conditions based on those conditions on site.
Thank you. Anyone here to address this item? Okay. Is there any discussion amongst the commission? Should we take a motion?
I'll move that we grant a conditional use permit for farm animals for Brent Subi at 106 West, 575 North.
I'll second. Aye.
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 Great. Okay. Now, we're going to move on to conditional use permit for a telecommunications tower for Rocky Shooter for Sprint Teleadventure Development Limited at 2097 West, 200 North.
Okay. I'll be a little bit more brief on this because it's a little more technical in nature, and Rocky, who I believe is here this evening, can maybe give some more of the specs on the tower. But the location just west of Angel Street, south of 200 North, you can see in the little yellow square on the image in front of you, is a proposal for a new cell tower. It's in the middle of a general commercial zoning district, which permits the telecommunications tower as a conditional use. You can see that surrounding it to the south, east, north, and west are all general commercial zone properties. However, the use of the two properties to the south are currently agricultural residential type uses. On the property, it's a 20 by 30, make sure I'm not misquoting, equipment site. It's just tucked in on the back end of the fence behind that storage building you can see towards the corner. And the proposal is to put in the new tower to provide coverage to this area of town. The applicant's provided a master plan of coverage based on the existing towers that they currently have and where the proposed one would be. Go click that first one. So you can see here the proposed cell site. There's a dot located in the middle of this map and the type of coverage it would provide. Currently, the closest towers in the area are just off of the freeway, just south of 200 North, or Burton Lane, just west of the freeway. And so this west area is without coverage currently, so they're exploring sites to provide service to those users. So they're, based on their research, co-locating would not accommodate the need they have for coverage in that area. Where and if there is co-location even available. The tower they're proposing is 120 feet in height, and they would take the top sector of that. I'll let Mr. Sucher talk a little bit about the antenna equipment and what's on there. And it does offer, as required by ordinance, space for 2 additional users below them. Currently there are no other proposed users, but other competing company or something, they will come in the future and probably eat those up pretty quick. So with that, we'll turn the time back to the commission. Unless there are questions for myself, again, the applicant probably has the best description of their proposal, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you. All right, well, looking through this, the 2 concerns I had were the one, whether they can co-locate, and the map. I mean, I'm not an expert. I'm not even sure I can read that map correctly, but it looked like to me there wasn't a dot where there needs to be a dot, and so the co-location issue is covered. I think the ordinance says shall co-locate unless it can be shown by a preponderance of the evidence that all existing towers are inadequate. And if that's what we're, that's what we're told, right? The co-location doesn't solve the problem.
That's my belief. So even the towers that are closest in the area, I believe the one off of 200 North is full. There may be another space for the tower just south of Burton Lane, but you can see the distance here. They don't cover the same area. There's and still, in fact, according to this, a gap between the coverage provided by those towers. So unless something exists in Layton or something that were an option, which this does show Layton towers, there are no existing ones, that would be their option, is to do something in this area.
Is Rocky here?
And I have a question before he starts from Lyle. who owns the property where that is located? Or, I don't need to know the name, but it's privately owned property, right?
Correct. So Terra Ventures, the property owner
Okay.
on it. So Mr. Schutzer here, he's representing Sprint, but they've been working with the property owner for the consideration of this request.
Okay.
So,
Want me to say a few things, or do you have some questions?
well, just that specific question. You're not able to get the coverage desired by co-locating, is that correct?
The closest tower to co-locate on is 0.95 hundredths of a mile to the north in Layton. And there is another sheet on the propagation that shows that the coverage that would be gained from co-locating there isn't nearly half as good as if we put up this tower. The other part about these coverage plots, it really speaks to the voice side of coverage. If this tower is permitted, then the data side is overwhelmingly better
I see.
than co-locating up north.
Okay.
So,
And the other concern I have with cell towers is more difficult to address. It's just the look of it. The ordinance says that it needs to be as unobtrusive as possible. And I've seen in other parts of my life, I've gone through displays of different kinds of ways to make to disguise or camouflage or otherwise ameliorate the effects of the tower. Are there any practical ideas that you have?
really not. At 120 feet, which the code allows, you put anything there and it's going to be a new thing that you will notice. By comparison, though, we get used to miles and miles of high voltage power lines everywhere, and they're not just one pole. They're strung along the highways and through neighborhoods, and we live with those, and we kind of overlook them because we want electricity. So one tower doesn't make it's not as unsightly as a power transmission line. I will say that this picture shows two future antennas on the bottom two positions. That is not initially there. Initially, it'll be the top position, and on the lower right-hand side, you see that there are two antennas in each azimuth for a total of 6 antennas. It used to be you would see like 9 antennas, 3 in each sector or 4 in each sector, and the tradition has changed so that it's trending down, less antennas per sector, and they're faster, smarter, sexier antennas. So the industry is trying to address looks. We put things that look like pine trees up, and they're not very good renditions of pine trees. So really this is the best approach for what we're doing.
Is this this is a monopole? Is it stacked steel? Is it spun concrete? What's the?
No, it's steel.
It is, okay.
It's a steel tower. It will, one of the new requirements that wasn't quite in your code, but it's one of the conditions of this requirement is it will be engineered for 150 miles of wind, and which is a good idea in this area, but it is steel, and they don't fall down. The bases are anywhere from 25 to 40 feet deep. They are really over-engineered.
I work in this industry, so I'm familiar with it. So, all right.
Okay.
And as far as noticing, was it just one of our yellow signs that went up about that?
Yeah, as a conditional use, correct, just the public posted notice on the property.
So the neighbors right there may have no idea, right?
Potentially.
Agricultural properties, I mean, does anyone?
Well, we also have the consideration of, future, if 200 North is where we're going to get a lot of people from the west, what is it called?
West Davis corridor.
Yeah.
West Davis corridor.
Driving
Yeah.
around.
That's going to be pretty visible from that entrance.
I've seen the pine trees that he's talking about. The only one I've seen, there's one at Sandy City Cemetery, and it looks like a giant fake Christmas tree.
Yeah, I've seen them in California all over.
So
It's worse.
There's
it's a
one
matter
on-
of opinion, but it's like choose your evil, I guess, you know?
Yeah, yeah, the artificial pine tree look is actually worse in my eyes than
Yeah.
having, you know, an erected tower, so, but anyways, so, all right.
Yeah, Dean Wall again, I just had a couple of questions. How are they gonna get power into there and whatever utility lines they need? Normally, I've seen generators at the bottom of those for backup power. Is that what this is gonna have, or? Okay.
This property, as the Planning Commission knows, and the Planning Department, is all under development. There is a development plat that's tentative right now. I think it's very close to being approved, or presented at least. All of the power and telephone going to the tower will be underground, and it won't be noticed. I mean, it'll be really a self-contained fenced compound. The setback requirement, according to the code, will be met by putting the tower on the inside part of that 25 by 30 space, so it's off to one side, so the setback for the tower from the adjoining properties will be easily met.
And there's no shelter at the base of this either, right? It's just
No,
a
this
ice
is-
bridge and then an exterior cabinet, and that's it.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
Any further discussion?
No. I'll move that we grant a conditional use permit for telecommunications tower for Mr. Rocky Schutzer.
Good.
Not bad, eh? Representing Sprint and Terra Venture Development Limited at 2097 West, 200 North.
And staff did have a few conditions in there, apologize for the interruption, and just to make sure that those are desirable by the commission.
With the conditions of plans submitted for a building permit show tower with the potential equipment of additional users and be designed to meet 150 mile an hour volt wind speed rather than the 100 mile an hour listed under section 173125. Number of co-locations to be limited to 2 additional users with no more than 3 users on the tower, and fencing surrounding the site be opaque and the barbed wire not be visible above the fencing.
I'll second that.
So who is it? It's my turn. I'm going to say nay. I'm reluctant to do that because I understand we need it, but I'd like to get the industry to come up with some solutions, some better solutions to the aesthetics of it.
I'm just going to guess that you're not a Sprint user. I mean, I'm just saying.
That's a good guess.
I am not a Sprint user.
Sorry. Is it my turn?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
I just wanted to say that in this case, with something so big and maybe a little shocking, it would be nice, I think, for the neighbors to not only have the yellow sign opportunity, but to have an actual notice that gets mailed to them, so that they would have an opportunity to come get all their information originally, from you, because you're the best source of information about this, and they could get all their questions answered and feel like the city is very aware of reaching out and being concerned about something so big going up right next to them. So, but I don't feel like that's a reason for me to vote nay, so I will say aye.
Aye.
I'm not a Sprint user either.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good luck. Okay, next is public hearing and request to rezone 1.53 acres of property approximately 1450 South Burton Lane from R120, single-family residential, to light industrial for Jim Puffer. This is something we've seen now before the commission twice, and we'll get to see it again. Go ahead, Andy. I mean, Lyle, excuse me.
Based on the number of people here, I'll do an introduction again, even though the planning commission's seen this on a couple of times. The property just right at the bend, south end of Deseret Drive and Burton Lane, on the west side of that street highlighted here on the map, is being requested to be rezoned from the R120 to the LI zoning district, essentially to accommodate the use of the storage of materials for landscaping business on site. The user, Mr. Jim Puffer, has put forward the request to accommodate that. As a rezone request, again, as a legislative decision, it's up to the broad discretion of the City Council ultimately to approve it. The Planning Commission gives a recommendation on this tonight with the public hearing. Of consideration is essentially how it fits in with the neighborhood of surroundings in the general plan, and that's been provided within the staff report and some of the components to determine that regarding the state of the business. And where it's located within the city is stated by the general plan. Previously, the Planning Commission, after reviewing the item, gave a recommendation to the City Council. They reviewed the recommendation but felt, based on the input they received and the impact of the proposal, that additional noticing ought to be sent out to more property owners. But by their direction, staff sent mailers to property owners within 500 feet. And we did all of the other noticing again. This time the notice on the property didn't get taken out by the wind, so it's still up and present. And there is another public hearing this evening for the input from the public for the Planning Commission's consideration. I put in a few photos to show the condition of the site. Just some of the questions that came up last time with the commission as we discussed it was the fencing surrounding the property. So this kind of gives an indication of where that lies. You can see this type of materials and the use that's taking place on site. There's some photos from just inside for a quick review of the commission to take a look at if you want to move forward on those, Andy. And then these photos here are taken from the rail trail. I know there were questions from the commission regarding what that might be, and this is a portion of the discussion that was had previously. It was staff's consideration that ultimately the applicant might like to put a shed building of sorts to store some of the materials on the property within those items that are more prone to theft or other things within a building. Based on the way the ordinance reads, if the zone abuts a residential zone, then a building would have to be 30 feet setback from that residential zoning boundary. The corridor is 60 plus feet wide throughout the rail trail corridor. And so we felt that it was our recommendation if that was desirable to have a building, it makes more sense to drag essentially the boundary, that imaginary zoning line, at least partly, if not across the trail, to allow for the construction closer to the fence line within the property. So this just kind of indicates that, how that would work if that's acceptable. And then these are some additional photos of from the trail. You can see the trail itself is lower. I realize this isn't the neighboring property windows to the west, so they're probably much higher, but the trail itself is set lower than the grade of this site, and then the fence is on top of that. So at least one perspective of what we're looking at. Again, with that, it is a public hearing, so if the commission can move forward with that, or I'd be happy to take questions whenever requested from the commission. And I do know the applicant is here this evening as well with a presentation and some information that they would like to share on their request.
Thank you. So refresh my memory from last time. The current use does not require a rezone. The rezone is required for the building. Is that correct?
The building was ultimately the trigger to move forward with the rezone. It seems that it's up for debate on whether or not the existing use was acceptable in the current zoning or not. So that in my opinion, it's more appropriate to move towards the LI zoning district. But initially, with staff's understanding of what was proposed on site, we felt that it's not items that we permit or in any circumstance, and so the storing of certain materials could be appropriate under the existing zone.
Any other questions for clarification before we open?
Just to clarify, so what's shown in purple there is still currently the R120?
The purple is an LI light industrial zone already, so the applicant's
already.
requesting the same zoning as that which is across the street. To the north, this is the power substation, and to the south is storage units.
Oh, got it, okay, right.
Everything
So that is, the yellow outlined area is still the R120?
Correct. So the brown color is all the R120 single-family zoning. The light green that's also close by is the RA zone. It is a single-family designation, also half-acre lot.
Can you explain to me why there's, see where the LI is, and there's that kind of scoop that's convex, yeah, right there. So at the top part, see how there's the R120 and the LI splits that. Why is that line there drawn, do you know?
I couldn't say exactly how that came from. Maybe Andy has some insight on it. And probably just had
Which
to do with
line?
ownership.
Yeah, see how
Oh, that
part-
area right
yeah.
there.
At
The
one
road
point,
does curve below
at
it.
one point, they were two separate properties with two different owners. This was also, at one point, open space for the Old Mill Village subdivision. As explained on this property, they found they had an excess of open space. So they were allowed to take some of it out of open space and sell it to help improve what they got left with that needed improvement. So that was originally open space. It's mostly the hillside of the ramp. The city has now acquired that.
The city owns that and owns the parcel to the east.
Parcel here as well, yes.
Yeah. And the city's using that, it's not an R120 use, right?
That's correct.
Is that something that needs to be cleaned up, maybe on a different day? Change that zoning, or?
Probably.
I mean, obviously, it has some bearing on this, and in addition to the use of it, but also the proximity of the light industrial to the proposed change to light industrial, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else? Should we open the public hearing? You ready?
Yeah.
All right. It'd be interesting to see how many of you are here on this one. We know we have a big crowd. We'll open the public hearing on this matter. Just so you know, that it's clear, we've had 2 public hearings on this already, and we're glad to have another one at the advice of the City Council to make sure that there's adequate notice and that you've had a chance to express your ideas and comments on this proposal. So if you'll come to the speaker and present your name, to the microphone, excuse me, present your name and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. And if someone else has already addressed it, then just go ahead and tell us that you're in support of that as well, and you move on to your next issue. Thank you.
Good evening. May I approach to pass just my statement to you guys? Is that
Sure, you
okay?
tell us your name.
I'm Nancy Villamizar.
Okay.
Good evening, all. It's very nice to have the opportunity to let my voice be heard. Like I said, my name is Nancy Villamizar. I'm a U.S. citizen, a registered nurse, and a single mother of 3 children. I live at 94 West Burton Lane, which is the lot which is directly south from Mr. Puffer's lot that he wants to rezone from residential to light industrial. I would like to say that I put my best efforts to keep my property clean and looking as nice as I can possibly can with the help of my neighbors. It is my only home and has required a large amount of investment, both in terms of money and hard physical labor. Leaving to a non-conforming property will drive down the value of mine. I'm very sad to say. I strongly oppose to the rezoning of the property for several reasons. First, I believe that a property owner who wants to rezone is supposed to apply for the rezoning first, wait for a decision by the city, and if approved, then use the property according to the approved zoning. The process has been totally backwards to Mr. Puffer. He has been using the property for industrial purposes, consistent with industrial zoning, even though the property is still zoned residential. Why is the city allowing him to do so? He should have waited before starting his business operations involved. The second point that I want to make is that the safety of my children, as well as the children of my neighborhood, is paramount. Mr. Puffer has heavy machinery, primary trucks, which go onto and leave the property several times a day. The way they have to run out of the lot is very awkward and makes me worry about the safety of children walking on the street, as well as other vehicles. Burton Lane was a busy street even before Mr. Puffer business operations created additional traffic. There are several people that ride their bikes and walk along the sides on this street in order to access the trail behind my house, including my kids. I fear that when one of these big trucks is coming out of the lot, they might have a hard time braking. When I back up out of my driveway in my minivan, I have to be extremely careful to avoid the bikers, the runners, and the heavy traffic. I can't imagine how a big truck carrying heavy loads of building materials can navigate the street with ease. This scenario is very dangerous and it's an accident waiting to be happen. The third point is that Mr. Puffer has placed huge pavers next to my property that are stacked higher than my fence. I have asked my kids and their friends not to go to the end of our property, as I don't want them to climb on the pavers. If the stacks were to fall over, the children will be seriously injured. I also have goats and chickens who run free in my lot, and when they are near the fence but still on my property, the pavers could fall over and injure them. Also, the piles of rocks and pavers and other items stored in the property are very unsightly and create a breeding ground for rodents that can easily enter and come into my property and do damage. The fourth point that I want to make is that the dust that my house is exposed to because of the big trucks coming in and out is horrendous. My son has asthma, and I have had to start changing our air filters on a regular basis to try to keep him healthy. This raises a concern, and I can't help but ask whether Mr. Puffer is required to get a permit for other permits for his building, for his business. For example, should he had applied for a fugitive dust control permit with the Utah Division of Air Quality? If so, has he done it? I'm just wondering. The noise from Mr. Puffer's trucks with their loud alarms and crashing sounds when they drop rocks onto the ground is very disturbing and distracting. The trucks work 6 days a week. Even Saturdays are busy. I hosted a party this past Saturday, and I could hear the noise. Between the noise and the dust, I knew that something had to be done if I was going to stay in my house. My house no longer seems to be in a residential area. Who would want to buy my house in the future, living to a business that creates such dangerous traffic, noise, dust, and unsightliness? Would any of the members of the Planning Commission want this business located next to their home and your family? Why has Mr. Puffer been allowed to implement such a drastic non-conforming use of this property without first obtaining rezoning approval? Mr. Puffer has several other nearby locations that he uses, leases, or owns. Why can he not consolidate his trucks and materials to one of those other locations that already have been proper zoning? I just plead with you to protect my family, my neighborhood, and property value by rejecting the rezoning of this property and setting a schedule to the phase out of Mr. Puffer's non-conforming industrial use of this residential zone property. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. I have a question for you, or two. So do you own the two parcels that are immediately south?
I am south of Mr. Puffer, yes.
So
the two parcels, correct.
Who had the little pointer out? Was that, so those two right there?
Yes.
Okay. And were you aware of this prior hearing, public hearing, either of the two?
Yes, I receive a notice by the mail, but I don't get my mail often. I work hard, and I'm not home very much, and I really don't open my mail as often. I did hear of it, but it was too late.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, may I pass something out, please?
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Terrell Rom. I'll make my comments short just because these videos are basically said a lot of what we have. What you're looking at in the handout here is my family, we recently moved to Kaysville. We picked Kaysville because of the amazing schools, the amazing community that was going on here. We purchased the home. If you look at the handout that I sent you, the top picture is a picture of Mr. Puffer's property, and you'll notice there's a lovely home back there. That home is my home, where now all of it looks over Mr. Puffer's land. When we purchased the home in July, it was residential. It still is residential, but somehow it looks like this. That's a question we have for the commission, is how that allowed to happen. But before we purchased the home, we did our due diligence, and we checked that it was residential. It was residential. This was not there. The storage units were already there. We were aware of them. We were not aware that there was going to be a business going in, or we would not have bought the property. The picture you see below that is a picture from my back patio that overlooks through the trail onto Mr. Puffer's property. I've talked to Mr. Puffer. He's been very kind and spoken to me on the phone, and his wife, and we've had an open dialogue, and I sure appreciate them. They're willing to do so. The question I have and the concern that I have is, if you look at that tiny URL, it's just a simple 10-second video that I sent, or that I shot from my cell phone camera. It's not been doctored in any way. You can just look it up on your phones. And the noise that happened, we were out at a back patio having our first patio with family in from out of state, and the noise was so bad we literally had to stop and go inside, but it was still so cumbersome that even inside we couldn't even hold a conversation because of these 1,000-pound boulders that were being dropped from that. So my question for you is just simple, besides other comments that we made tonight. Would you want this in your backyard if you live in Kaysville? I know you look at the picture of that dump truck, you think, man, that is a beautiful dump truck. I sure would love that in my backyard. And that's why I moved to Kaysville, so I could have dump trucks like that in my backyard, even though you did due diligence ahead of time to make sure that that would not happen. Anyways, thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
My name is Dr. Claren Aldridge. I live on Appaloosa Avenue along the road that runs to the west of the property. I'd like to bring you some pictures of what the property looks like today. May I approach?
Sure.
I appreciate you considering my comments in opposition to the proposed zoning change. I do understand that there are 2 previous public hearings. However, it became obvious at the City Council meeting, which I did hear about 30 minutes before and I did attend, that notice had been given to 2 public entities, the UTA and the Jordan Valley Water District, I believe, and Nancy Villamizar. Those were the only people that had notice of prior hearings. That's why there are more people here tonight, is because the notice was given more broadly. The proposed zoning change of the property in question from single-family residential to light industrial would have a serious negative impact on the environment, safety, and value of the residential neighborhood which surrounds the property. The property is now, and has been for some time, ugly and unsightly. It is a pustule in the middle of our neighborhood. It is an eyesore. No matter any promised beautification efforts by Puffer Landscaping, we, the residents of Kaysville in that area, have seen Puffer Landscaping's intentions regarding the property. Leopards don't change their spots. This ugliness is unlikely to change. And no matter how much lipstick you put on it, it is still a pig. I don't understand why rezoning is even under consideration when law enforcement is really the issue. Puffer Landscaping's current use of the property is illegal. It represents willful disregard for city ordinances regarding zoning. Furthermore, the activities and unattractive state that the property is maintained in now represents complete disregard to the neighborhood and its residents. There have been significant commercial improvements on the property. Mr. Puffer must have known, or at least should have known, that rezoning and permits would be required for such improvements. It is simply not acceptable to think that he did not know beforehand what he was doing was unlawful. If laws are not enforced, they have no effect and are useless. I do not think that this sort of break the law now and make it legal later activity is even reasonable. Sometimes people call it asking for forgiveness rather than permission. That's not the way laws work. I've heard the rumor that Mr. Puffer was told by some city official or officials that he could proceed with what he was doing on the property. Clearly, if such advice was given, it was premature and without authority. To my knowledge, there is no conditional use permit of any kind on this matter, and yet clear industrial-style activities are occurring. I asked myself, if Jim really did receive such permission, why have our city officials allowed this to happen? We have zoning to avoid such conflicts. Who is responsible for illegally authorizing a non-resident of Kaysville to illegally operate a business on single-family residential land? Our city officials should be acting to defend our interests as citizens of Kaysville, not the interests of a non-resident who wants to operate a business in Kaysville. What's more, there have recently been a few cases in our area where Kaysville City has set the precedent that it will enforce the zoning ordinances and the zoning that's currently in place, forcing 2 different people that I'm aware of to stop commercial activities. These are people who had lived on the property themselves. Why is this case different? Who's schmoozing who? Is that the reason there was almost no public notice for the last hearing? I think this whole thing that we're saying stop your activities to these other people and go ahead, Jim, and do whatever you want violates the doctrine of equal protection under the law. Enforcement of the applicable laws and ordinances regarding these violations should be immediately undertaken, as well as requiring Mr. Puffer to bring the property back within compliance of its zoning, rather than simply allowing him to do whatever he wants and get the law changed later to allow it retrospectively. I'd also like to point out that the north end of the light industrial area that is existing is also a horrifying eyesore. It has piles of asphalt and dirt. I believe the city owns that, and I would call upon the city to seriously reflect on how that property has been seriously non-maintained. Thank you very much for listening to my comments.
My name is Dr. Michael Smith, and I also live on Appaloosa Avenue. I'll keep mine very brief because I'm sure there's a lot more people that are going to talk. I'm echoing everything that they've been saying, but I just went through this process in Salt Lake. I purchased a piece of property. I know the right way to do it if you're not concerned about rezoning is that you purchase the property contingent upon zoning approval. So when you buy a property outright, if it doesn't get rezoned, you're stuck with it the way that it is. And I took that upon myself with this property. I bought a residential, and I just made the notion, you know, if I can't get the rezone that I want, then I'm gonna resell it or do whatever I want with it. But I wanted to stick with the law to do that. So my biggest issues are safety issues. And I've been to a couple of these meetings, and I understand. I think traffic studies would have to be done. I'm very concerned. There are so many bikers, runners, and you come whipping around that corner on Burton Lane, and it's already so narrow. To get a big truck coming across that and another car, I mean, it'll seriously jeopardize the safety of residents of Kaysville. And then also coming around the corner, we lost the crosswalk because of the repavement. I mean, it's scary for our kids even just to cross right there where it wraps around, the Burton Lane wraps around right there. That crosswalk is it's gone now. So having big trucks coming around, all those, and it's a really weird angle for going into that property, like Sister Avija Nancy said. It's very difficult to get in and out of there, so I'm concerned about how the big trucks are going to be doing that. The last thing is, if we rezone this light industrial, the north property above and the south kitty corner that's all barren land right now, what if someone comes and buys that and says, well, you offered a light industrial to them, why are you excluding us to that? And where does it stop is my big question. I don't know all the laws. I don't know what the master plan is. If it's the master plan is to keep that residential. But if we approve this as light industrial, is the next one going to buy, and we're just going to have light industrial go all the way around here, and it's just going to be some big industrial park that spans that whole span. So those are my big concerns, and I do echo, I think this is totally illegal to do this. You need to do it the right way. I think he should have everything pulled off the property, and I don't care what the cost is, because he did it knowing it needs to be back to square one, light excess supplies on the property, not a complete commercial use. And we do it the right way, do it the legal way, come to you guys and ask for a rezone the way it should be done, and not do it illegal and ask for permission afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Melissa McIntyre. I live on Appaloosa, across the street from Terrell Rom. And I was shocked when I saw piles of rocks and pallets stacked higher than the fence line with no notice. All of a sudden, it was just there. I heard boulders dropping loud, scared, terrified my 3-year-old daughter. She thought it was an earthquake. That's how bad, across the street, across the trail, I heard it and felt it. If that's going to continue, it's not allowed. I don't approve of that in my neighborhood. It looks like a dump yard to me. As I stay at home with my children, I like the surroundings. We moved to quiet, sweet West Kaysville. It's like a hidden treasure. Nobody knew about it. When we moved here 8 years ago, it's a place where I wanted to raise my children. It's called Sunset Equestrian Estates. Our neighbors bought a horse. They hoped to buy that exact property for their horse. They tried for 2.5 years to purchase that from the HOA. Didn't succeed. They were gonna put a horse there, quiet, right by Sunset Equestrian Estates. That to me is a little bit questionable. When you can get cheap land and have a wonderful business, why not? I know there's other industrial places where you can put your equipment and keep your business. A dear friend also said that he was driving down Burton. You can see there's curves on Burton, both around where we take our children to school and they walk home from school. There's that curve from Carrybrook on up, and then Burton, where it also curves as you go over the freeway. Those are blind turns. Brad Nye, he quoted, "I had to slam on my brakes to wait for this dump truck to pull out and almost got in a wreck because of it." Now that's teenagers driving home from Davis High to me too. That's my kid in a couple years driving. So again, we ask, would you like that in your backyard? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Matt Butterfield, and I also live on Appaloosa. We're right on the corner of Burton and Appaloosa. And I think the safety thing's been beat to death here. But one thing that hasn't been brought up is his lot's not paved at all. And so every time a truck goes in and out of there, they're dragging dirt onto the roadways. And most cities fine people in construction areas that even bring anything onto a roadway, let alone a residential area. I think it impacts your wastewater. And I don't know, what the city gets for funding for street sweepers and stuff like that. There's no curb and gutter in the area. There's no sidewalks in the area. We run that regularly. We bike it regularly. There's tons of people on the weekends. You'll see bikers coming down through there like teams. This is not the place for it. So hope you can consider everybody's input on this and make the right decision. Thanks.
Thank you.
How are you? I'm David Woolley, and I live on Country Mill, right on, well, third house from the corner on Country Mill. One of the things that I've noticed, number one, and it's been mentioned before, but if we're looking to rezone, why have we gone ahead with putting all the equipment and all the work and everything else into it, rather than getting it rezoned first, and if it passed, then do that and spend that money. Number two, I look at it from a safety standpoint. Now, strictly right now today, if you were to go through there, and as I drove over here, I double-checked. The gate was opened, and as you drive in or go by, right there next to the road, there's several stacks of flat stone. And there's several pallets of flat stone that are stacked on top of themselves. And if you look there right now, some of those pallets are leaning almost on a 30-degree angle. Now, if I was going to say kid, but that's a long time ago, but if my grandkid or great-grandkid happened to be in there, and because the gate was wide open, there's full access, right now it's extremely dangerous for individuals. The other thing I noticed is on the west side of the property, they have rocks piled up right against the walking trail fence. And unfortunately, whether or not I can't say that the rocks that are piled up caused it, but the walking trail fence is pushed in towards the walking trail. It looks like some of the rocks that have been piled up have shifted over or whatever, but or maybe when they went in with a pallet and dropped the pallet down, it hit against the fence and started it to bow. It hasn't busted it out, but you can definitely see the bow. And I would just counsel that we need to really reconsider the situation and take a good look at it before we make any decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Gary Pierce, and may I approach to provide you with some paperwork?
Sure. By the way, here are those pictures from what was back.
That we received.
Can we hold on to these until we're done?
Yes, please.
Oh, you, all right,
Just in case we want to review them
Sorry.
or something, we might as well have them. We might be here a
We can
while.
pass it.
Is this is the same that we received on email, right?
What I just provided you, as I gave you last night, each of you electronically, is a neighborhood petition of 181 names of citizens owning residential property in the vicinity of 1450 South Burton Lane. As you've heard tonight, there are multiple issues and concerns. All of those that signed that petition, more even contacted me today to sign it, but it was too late. We'll save the rest if we need to for the city council. But all of those that signed the petition had concerns with the rezoning of this property at issue. Those concerns obviously vary. I live 5 doors down, kind of around on Burton Lane, so I don't feel the dropping boulders. Do I notice that the dust has heightened? Yes, definitely I do. One of my major concerns that has been addressed, but it's interesting because as I went back and reviewed the videos of the April 13th and the April 20, wait, let me see which dates there were. There were the last 2 planning meetings where you discussed this issue. The first one in which there was no public hearing, Mr. Puffer, I believe, had requested that portion be canceled. And of course, we were not notified or noticed of that hearing. There were a number of very insightful questions that were raised by you council members. One that I believe is imperative and significantly important, and let me walk to the map and just show you exactly, and then I'll return. If you look right here, this is the entryway into the property. It's very narrow, it's on an incline, and you have, because the property was not resold here where they went to try to purchase from Ms. Viamasar, to come out with a heavy truck here has been noted, can be considerably problematic and a danger. I have a high school student. Some of you may have a high school student. Many of you will have a high school student. That is a very busy thoroughfare for my neighborhood. And the traffic is heightened in the morning as you've got hundreds of students going to school, if not thousands, and in the afternoon hours, not only including the times that we that go to work travel that road. It is a main destitute of traffic. Those trucks are there early in the morning and later in the evening. And I assume that they will be, when the weather is warm, they'll be there as often as they can so that profits trickle in. I can't seem to get out of my mind the inherent danger of a loaded down dump truck with heavy 2,500-pound boulders inching their way out, curving back up southward, or excuse me, northward up on Burton Lane with such a slow pace that that would not be problematic and provide a high potential of an accident to occur. My hope and prayer is that that would never happen, but my sense of reality begs to differ, and the potential for injuries or fatal injuries is no concern to scoff at or to not take seriously. I would question this committee as to whether a traffic impact study has been conducted, especially on that major thoroughfare. In Kaysville, we all know there are three ways in. There's Shepherd, there's Burton Lane, and then you have, I think it's 200 North that comes straight in. There's only three, and this one is the most surrounded by residential. So that traffic is high. The second point that I want to make is I watched the last video that transpired where Mr. Puffer made representations to this planning committee on April 27th about how he was going to improve this piece of property, how he was going to beautify it. When I met with Mr. Puffer on property with he and his wife, he explained to us he was going to put 20-foot trees across the east side in an effort to beautify it. And there were questions in my mind. At that time, and even at the last hearing, he raised a prior project that he did in Layton, a tree farm, you may recall. And he mentioned, and if you go back and look at that video, he mentioned it very often that the people loved it. The people thought it was a fantastic project then and even today. Well, let me share with you what I provided to you. Having hearing that, I thought, well, let me, since he's making that representation to you and to the community, and in discussions directly with me, I thought, let's explore that. Let's see if that's true. Well, what you'll find there in the second exhibit is communications from members who live in that HOA that sold Mr. Puffer the property. You'll notice specifically a number of issues that were provided to the Kaysville Homeowners Association, not only with Mr. Puffer's failure to confirm with the agreement with the HOA and the beautification, but all of the additional problems are laid out that these homeowners have experienced it. Let me just read a couple. I have equipment in 90% of my view. That's a homeowner like you've heard tonight that lives directly behind the property. They go into their backyard and their view, 90% of their view is blocked with Jim Puffer equipment. The noise is unbearable at times. You've heard that tonight. Even so far as on the other side of Appaloosa, homes are shaking as boulders are dropped. Trucks are coming in and out of the property. The backing up of dump trucks, the incessant beeping, as we all know, of forklifts, that's what they're referring to here. The beep, beep, beep from the tractor backing up, sometimes for several hours a day. This is what we believe has the potential. A few trees on the east side, fabulous, fantastic, but where does reality lie? When we look at one of the famed properties, the tree farm property in Layton, and we see this, and we hear this from those that experienced, those that accepted those promises, and yet those promises were not delivered. The late hours, working past 9 p.m. The dust is horrible. The reduction in property values. I can't enjoy my own yard. That is a capital B-I-G capital D-E-A-L, a big deal. Not secure, danger to my children, the same things we've heard tonight. And my privacy is being infringed upon. Now, what you'll also see are pictures. Pictures of that property. And he promised that, I mean, that's his spectacle, that's his example. That's how he presented it to you. The video doesn't lie. I saw it. Anybody can go see it. But you look at these pictures. Does that picture number 2, as it's marked on the back, does that look a neat and tidy work site? You go through all of them. They talk about the pools of water that are left and the increase in mosquitoes now because it's still water. A problem that those kind citizens that sold him the land are now experiencing. Piles of the planter boxes just thrown together in a corner of the lot. Eyesore. I mean, none of this. You can go through each picture. The point of it is they're there for you. To believe that, to believe anything else will be that this will be any different is hard to believe. So since I'm coming close to my 3 minutes with my timer behind me, let me close. With these comments and concerns you've heard tonight, and echoing many of those concerns already reported, I hereby request that this body deny the request to rezone 1450 South Burton Lane from single-family residential to light industrial for the foregoing reasons, and importantly, all the implications of what could happen should such zoning be changed to LI. We in the legal world refer to this as a slippery slope, meaning that once it's rezoned, there's no guarantee that a permitted use under LI, or if you look at the zoning restrictions of LI, where it says if you build a building, the building must be at least 10 feet tall, but not taller than 35 feet, would someday be built on this property. Your stewardship when you took that oath to serve was to the citizens of this great city. Please honor that oath and commitment tonight by supporting your Kaysville neighbors who signed, 181 of them signed a petition denying this rezoning request. With that, I appreciate your attention.
Thank you.
Can I ask some questions about the petition? Sure. So I'm just curious to get more details about the petition. So how widely was it circulated? How did you gather the signatures? Will you explain that process?
Sure. We had 6 petitions. Each, as you'll notice, is numbered to 55 signatures. Those petitions, we had a meeting. Actually, these petitions were gathered in a matter of 5 days. We had a meeting at my home. The 6 petitions were parsed out to various neighborhood members in this particular area, and they walked up and down the streets to get signatures. I attended the HOA meeting, and at that meeting, out of the 15 people there, acquired 13 signatures. So it was done by foot, door to door, in an effort to acquire the signatures. Because many people couldn't come tonight. We all have busy lives, but they wanted their name and their voice to be heard, and that was one manner in which it could be.
And so, do you have a sense on how many people were actually contacted and how many people refused to sign? Like in terms of like just order of magnitude, percentage of, I mean, I know this is not a scientific question here, percentage of people in the area that you looked at, did you actually contact, like actually had some contact with, and how many, just again, percentage-wise, order of magnitude, would you guess said, I'm not going to sign?
I'll speak to just one. I did the east side of Appaloosa, which is what you see there directly behind the property. Every single home that is on that street besides one that did not answer the door signed on that east side. So it was 14 out of 15 or 14 out of 14 that were notified. That was just mine.
And I also did Carrybrook with a friend. It's the opposite side of our neighborhood. They too, every single house signed. And then I also took Paddock. There was only one former employee of Puffer who did not sign. One out of about 60 people.
And I took Burton Lane, that's where I live, and also I'm on Burton and Wilford. So I took Wilford as well, and all signed.
So is this Paddock?
That's Paddock, yes.
Okay.
So, so in looking at this here, I mean, in just what I'm seeing here,
Yes.
right, adjacent, directly adjacent, and even kind of, there we go, and
Yes.
kind of, you know,
On this.
flowing over and stuff, and then, yeah. So, directly adjacent on Appaloosa, Paddock, all that.
No, more here, through here.
So I mean, so again, so I guess what Commissioner Sundloff is asking, and I guess that's the question that I have, and that's the answer I don't think I've received or anybody. So you have, what, several hundred homes here at least, right?
Correct.
Several hundred, maybe 500 even in this whole area.
I don't-
How big of an area did you canvass, and what, I mean, so you received 181 out of what, out of 500? Did you get half?
No.
You didn't?
We didn't do that.
We only did the area around the property.
So you're
Close
canvassing,
proximity.
I had one
so your canvassing was selective
on
then?
a different area.
Come on, I'm just trying to gather some facts here.
I had one up on Via La Costa that had signed, which is east on Burton.
Could you state your name, please?
Sorry, yes, it's Jody Butterfield.
Thank you.
So I had one on East Burton Lane, or excuse me, she lives on the east side of the freeway. East
Over here?
Burton Lane, yep. If you go all the way up Burton Lane, she lives on Via La Costa.
Right here.
Yeah, that's.
Yes. I got it the last night at like 8:30.
So
I had.
she signed the petition too?
She absolutely did, and in fact, she stated, is that what all of the dump trucks going up and down Burton Lane are? Because I bet I have 10 neighbors that would sign tonight. It was 8:30 at night, my husband was at work, I had 4 kids to get to bed. I couldn't go petition for another 5 hours up on Via La Costa. But everyone that knocked on, the doors that I knocked on, had no problem signing, other than maybe 3 refused to sign. One that had a friend that worked for Puffer and felt like it was a conflict of interest. One whose son plays baseball and Puffer is his coach and felt like it was a conflict of interest. And the other one, she had no interest in either fight. So 3 out of everybody I contacted, and I did most of Carrybrook and that whole neighbor over by Endeavor Elementary.
Just one other question in regards to the discussion about the list here. Were these, as I read through the list, it didn't appear that it was limited to households. It seemed like I saw several husband and wife signs. So if you're 181, how many households does that represent?
Well, we'd have to go specifically through it and count. I mean, there were some that I had signed where the husband was home and the wife wasn't.
So
And there were some where the wife signed
an estimation,
mine, and
40
then
or
the
40 or
husband
50
may
of
have
those?
signed somebody else's. So no, this is directed to Kaysville City voters, not households.
Okay.
These are voting members.
I'm again just
of
trying to figure
Kaysville.
out, kind of based on what Stroh was asking, out of 500 households, we didn't have 181 households.
Well, we didn't do
signed.
500 households.
I understand that. And again, just generalizing the area, how many households we have in that area.
Like, I know,
Households responded.
I know this neighborhood really well, and I've looked through the petition, and I think there are some duplicates, and there are some people that are not of voting age, but that's not, I think, the most relevant question to me is, how many people are you talking to and having a chance to explain it to them, and they're engaged and they're saying no? And what you're telling me is that there's very few people that are saying they're not interested in signing the petition.
That's what I'm telling you.
And I'll just,
I don't want to tell you that that's what
No,
you're
but
telling
that's
me.
been
I
the
want you to
experience.
tell me that, right.
You heard from all 5
Right.
people that walk petitions around. That's the experience.
and the reason I asked the question, and I didn't presume an answer either way, I was legitimately asking a question to get the answer. My question and my concern was, as I'm sure you could probably appreciate, and Stroh was sort of hitting on it, are these the people that are impacted? Which I think the first part of that was yes, because Appaloosa and Paddock, I see, are the ones that are really impacted, especially Appaloosa. When you start going beyond that, it feels cherry-picked, and it feels vocal minority. And so I heard both, but I will say I heard that the people that are impacted the most are the ones whose names are on
When you
the
look,
petition.
the reason we had the addresses put on there is because you could specifically pinpoint the houses that are right in that area. That's why the petition says in close proximity.
Right. Well,
We did not go way over on the other side of Sunset and start working over there. We did have somebody grab a petition to circulate it over there, but we never saw it again.
Well, and I appreciate the petition efforts. That is helpful, at least for me. And like I said, the people that I care the most, at least from what I heard, are the ones that have generally signed it. I'm just speaking me personally. But I also think that there was some cherry picking. For example, there was at least 1 or 2 names from Santa Anita. I know people on Santa Anita that never heard a word of this. So if someone on Santa Anita signed it, but somebody else never heard a word of it, that feels like, and I know this is anecdotal, it feels like you're picking someone on Santa Anita that you know is going to sign it. So there is a little bit of that, but there's also a little bit of the people that matter most. I think a reasonable person not having a dog in this fight would probably agree with that assessment.
But again, I think the people that don't know about it, either way, I mean, we don't consider them because.
But their name might be on the petition because they say, yeah, I don't care, sure, I'll sign it.
Well, if they don't know and they sign it, that's different. But again, I think the relevant question is who knows about it and doesn't want to sign.
Sure, and I heard that there was very, very few of that, yeah. I agree.
I have a
wanna
question
add
before.
one-
Oh, can I just
oh,
ask
I'm
a
sorry,
question
sure,
of Mr. Pierce? Sorry. Just, my question is different. My question is a little more of the history than we got in our reports on this, which is, did the HOA sell to Mr. Puffer directly?
Our understanding is, yes, he purchased the land directly from an HOA, not the HOA of Appaloosa and Paddock, but the HOA on the other side.
Yes, okay.
The R120 to the north.
And I believe you discussed that in one of your meetings. There was a reference to it being considered open space.
Yes.
And did the HOA still have the required?
They had more than the
open
required,
space?
right,
Yeah.
that is correct. I was just wondering whether it was, you were part of that HOA
Not at all.
from your neighborhood. A different HOA. Okay, so that is interesting, that it's a different HOA, but it right backs up onto yours. So, and how long ago was that sale to, does anyone know?
I mean, Mr. Puffer will have to
Well, no.
answer that.
I just remind the commission that we're still in a public hearing.
Yeah, we are.
And I understand you're getting further
Oh, okay.
information, but.
Yeah, I just
maybe
wanted to
oughta-
ask questions to people who might know. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy K. Brewer, and I'm one of the cherry pickers. I'm one that signed the petition with my husband, not because we're right in that immediate neighborhood. We're on the very end of Shepherd and Sunset, but we utilize the trail. We're on that trail 6 days a week. And several of our friends ride their bike or run or whatever on the rail trail, and that was one of the things that brought Barry and I to Kaysville. Was we love the idea of the rail trail and the bird sanctuary and just how wonderful West Kaysville is. And so I've been on my bike and I've been jogging and listening to the noise and breathing in the dust. And so that's just another, I wanted to kind of bring in that thought because no, I don't live right there, but I'm affected by it. And I just have to say, as I've listened to everyone, this is a residential zoning. This is not a zoning that Mr. Puffer should be able to ever have done what he's done. Let's get back to the basics and let's do things the right way. Thank you.
Well, I'm Ann Pritt.
I live on East Center Street, and I'm here for a different reason. But after all I've heard tonight, if I had the petition, I would sign it, because I believe in what is right.
182 names on there. Got it.
Thank you. I mean, it is wrong to hurt people who legitimately buy property expecting a peaceful residential area and then have it overcome by this kind of destruction. Thank you.
Did she say her name?
I don't know.
Did you get her name?
I did, and I couldn't understand. Do you want to ask her?
She's got it.
Oh, you got it.
That's all. We don't care about it.
We've got it, thank you.
My name is Erica Locke, and I also live on Appaloosa. And I just
What was
wanted-
your name again?
Erica Locke. L-O-C-K, no E.
No E.
But I just wanted to mention a point on the petition. I did take the west side of Appaloosa, and just to be clear, I know there were some about, did people not understand this? Did you just get them to sign it because you were friends with them? I only went to 15 homes, and I spent over 2 hours. So I sat on people's doorsteps, I explained exactly what was happening, I gave my concerns. So, I can't speak for everyone else that did the petitions, but I spent a significant amount of my time making sure that people understood what they were signing. So I'll make this brief. One thing I just want to make sure is clear, and I know that Mike had discussed it, where that crosswalk is missing when you come around Burton Lane. I just want to make sure everyone understands. We have at least 100 to 200 kids that cross that for school. So that is a main way that the kids get to school, both on their feet and their bikes, year-round. So that's why we're all concerned about the safety of the children and the trucks coming down there. And then one other thing I'll just mention in terms of, the value of our homes. My home my backyard is the Appaloosa. I'm just down the street from both Terrell and Mike, who spoke about that. And when we all moved in, we had concerns about the train and the pipeline. Those are the two things we hear about all the time. And a handful of folks who've sold houses on our street, those are the concerns they hear about from buyers and people looking. And I'm just thinking, heaven forbid I ever leave Kaysville. I don't plan to. I love it there. But that's an additional concern that we would hear from future buyers if we're trying to sell our homes, right? The pipeline, the train, and now we have this business right behind our backyard.
Thank you.
I'm Jordan Kamak. I'm the president of the Old Mill Village HOA Association. We are the ones that sold the property to Jim Puffer after we had sold some additional property to the city and had worked out the agreement to be able to release the open space for that area. We had had 5 potential buyers for the property. One wanted to put a horse on it. One guy we talked to, he wanted to lease it, but we weren't interested as a community to lease the property out. We didn't want to have that hassle. So we said we're only selling it. We had it up for sale for over a month. We listed it with Bruff Realty, and he put an ad out for it. We only got one offer. When we got the one offer, we had our HOA management company call all the people that had reached out before, as well as Bruff Realty, and ask if anybody was still interested. We gave them a week deadline to respond to us. Nobody responded. We still waited another week and still only had the one offer from Jeff Puffer. Our HOA had met together in June of last year and had discussed about the different options of people that have reached out to our HOA and buying the property. We talked about what would potentially be there and what would be the use. The vast majority of our HOA, of the 262 lots within our HOA, with roughly 230 of them being occupied, 30 of them are owned by Jordan Valley Water District. And Jordan Valley Water District expressed that they were okay with it too, to approve the use of it if we were to decide to sell to Jim Puffer or to whoever, for the different options. We actually have one of our HOA members here that wanted it for a different purpose, to house some pigeons on and stuff. Personally, I like the guy and kind of wanted to help him out with his pigeon business. But our HOA said they didn't want pigeons. They didn't want bird poop all over the place. So we opted for that option. So, there's a devil in every way you look at it, I guess. But we sold it knowing what it would be used for. Our opinion, my opinion, is the area that we currently have asphalt millings, concrete rubble from the city's demo projects, dirt, and CAP's topsoil pile there. that is where the trucks are coming from. If you want to sit there and watch during the day, especially as it's warming up now and CAP starts selling topsoil again, I guarantee that almost 10 of those trucks to one of Jim's trucks driving out of there per day. We hear the backup alarms. We had neighbors that complain with the asphalt millings being dumped at 4:30 in the morning as they're milling over by Barnes Park and coming to dump. So we've worked things out along the way, and we appreciate what the city's done to help in that aspect and allowing us to be able to sell off that property. Technically, you can't build on it because of some of the restrictions in there to build a house. We had looked at that as being an option because somebody had reached out. But what Jim has done so far and the things he's done in other areas, we anticipate it being a good thing, and that's what our HOA has decided to do and voted for and ended up selling to him when he reached out to us. So.
What is your name again?
Excuse me, Jordan Kamak.
Okay, thank you.
I live on Burton Lane.
When was
Or
this
not
sold?
Burton Lane, excuse me, Barley Lane.
When was this sold?
When was it sold? It was sold the end of July, is when we agreed, last year, when we agreed
So
to the
July
offer.
2016.
And it was late, I want to say September-ish timeframe that we actually closed on it.
Thank
So
you.
you've owned this for 9 months-ish.
Yeah, late August, early September timeframe.
And your HOA represents, you said approximately 230 units?
We have 262 lots, 230 of them
Which
are
are
occupied.
where, could you, yeah, show me on where.
Is it this?
It's all the R120 to the north.
Got it. Okay.
So,
Thank you.
you bet.
Thank you, that was helpful.
Yeah, we actually, as part of our HOA annual meeting, we invited people that were interested to come and present their options to them. Jim Puffer came and answered any questions from our HOA, from those people that showed up, explained what he was going to do, talked about it being rock and soil and admin or amendments that he'd be storing there, and everybody there in the board meeting or the annual meeting were happy with that. So we had, I think it was about 70 of the homes represented at that meeting, so.
How many from Appaloosa?
None from Appaloosa. But some of the pictures too, if you look at the trail, granted it's not from their house, the second story of the house, but if you're walking on the trail, you can barely see the top of the concrete barriers that he has there. It's a lot cleaner than it was in the past. It's a lot cleaner than some of the areas to the south of it where someone is storing horses on another part of the property to the south of there. I think we ended up with a better deal, so. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, you didn't. So we gave us.
We're not having.
Yeah, we're not, yeah,
Let's come,
You can do that offline.
someone else want to come up before we close the hearing?
I don't live in that area. I'm a resident of Kaysville. And
Your name?
emotionally,
You wanna
my
say-
name is Dave Woolston. I'm so emotional at hearing this that I'm amazed that you're asking these questions. I've attended many of these in West Jordan for many, many years. I have never, ever in all my attending meetings heard such a beautiful presentation on why that should be stopped. Never. They presented every issue to you that could possibly hand, how it destroys the neighborhood, destroys the environment, destroys the safety, and he's moved ahead without approval. And it's like you really just want to approve it. I get that feeling. You want to approve it,
I don't
and you
think
do
any of
not
us
want
have
to
said
listen
that,
to them.
sir.
That's the way I feel when I listen to your questions.
Oh,
For
what's your-
me, how they got those petitions doesn't even matter. They presented so many wonderful things about why it shouldn't be done. The signing of that petition is very little. And for somebody that's just here listening to this and hearing what this would do to the city, I think it should be stopped. I just wanted to express that as one who's listened and what a difficult time these people are going through.
Thank you.
My name's Dean Wall again.
Still.
I live on the east side, and I hate to do this, but because I have problems with the high schoolers parking in front of my place, but I agree 100% with what they've said here on not doing it. I've driven down there and almost gotten in an accident with one of the big trucks. It's dangerous and it's kind of an eyesore. I mean, I wouldn't want it in my neighborhood, so, and like I say, I live on the east side, and I agree 100% with what they've said of not granting it, okay?
Great, thank you. Step right up.
My name's Doug Carey. I'm one of the cherry pickers as well. I live on Driftwood Lane, which is just off of Burton Lane, west of the freeway. And I'm not affected by the sound or anything, but it is a safety issue driving up and down. I bike on Burton Lane all the time, and Burton Lane, just without the trucks, is a very difficult road.
I agree.
I was talking to one high schooler just the other day when there was construction in the middle of Burton Lane this week, and he said coming home from high school over the overpass, he had to slam on his brakes to barely miss the cones and the flagger there, which is just before where the trucks would be coming out. I'm also a real estate agent. I helped the Romes when they bought the house, and I represented the sellers selling the house that wanted to purchase the property for horses. And from a real estate perspective, it's going to affect the values of everybody on Appaloosa, the VMSRs who own that property negatively and drastically. So plus, in addition, I was on the Planning Commission in North Salt Lake for 6 years, and just hearing what I'm hearing about an R120 zoning, that this is allowed so far, just boggles my mind. So I recommend a negative or an unfavorable recommendation to the City Council on this.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
I live a lot closer to that area than some of the people that have signed this petition, and I never got that petition sent to my house. So,
what's your name?
I'm Ryan Blocker.
Thank you.
I live at the very south end of Kays Drive. First of all, that area there, when we would do scout fundraisers, we would dump our grass and the thatch that we would take out of lawns and the aerating, whatever you call them, turds? I don't know. But we'd take those and we would,
what you call them.
We would take them over and throw them in that area because it was just kind of an abandoned area. I remember having to drive my four-wheel drive truck through there, and it was bumpy, and I was afraid I was going to get a flat tire in there. It just is, no one's taking care of that area. And so, as I hear of 181 people that signed it, and I lived 800 yards from there, 600 yards, and I didn't get that. I kind of get the feeling that people signed it that were in their community, maybe in their congregations at church, or, and I think that, no, I don't say it in that way, but I say it because these are the friends and these are the people that they know, and they went and they gave a persuasive argument on their side. And if there's that many people that are concerned about asthma and safety of their kids and people getting killed, of the 181, how many of them took the time out of their day to drive 2 miles down here to deal with this?
You know what? I did the street, and I spent 3 hours that day.
Ma'am, he's speaking right now, please. Thank you.
And so,
Ryan, you're telling me that you live down here on Case Circle, is that right?
Case Drive up there.
Oh.
I live
right there.
Oh, all right.
Within the old
So north
HOA.
of it.
Other HOA.
Yeah, the other HOA. Okay.
And so,
Just wondering.
I'm just surprised. I just think people have something against Mr. Puffer, and that's why they don't want that there. But I think that he's improved that area. I think he's a business here that provides a service to this community. And I'm just surprised at how bitter people are about the situation.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. We'll close the public hearing. Do you want to take some time in the public hearing? You'll probably have a chance either way, but go ahead if you'd like.
So when I was a little boy,
You need to state your name, please.
oh, my name's James Puffer, Jim Puffer. When I was a little boy, I remember an exercise that a teacher shared with us, and it happened more than once. And what happened is, I don't know, and you may have all had the opportunity to have this kind of experience, but when she put us all in a circle, and then the teacher whispered in my ear, and then I whispered to the next person, and then to the next person, and to the next person, and to the next person. And by the time it got all the way around the circle, in the end, the original spoken fact turned into a variety of mistaken events and words. And I believe that this is what's happened in this situation in terms of wanting to change my property to Burton Lane to light industrial. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here tonight in hopes of being able to help my neighbors and all citizens within our community, that they'll know exactly what my intentions are, because I think that there's a lot of misrepresentation. So it's my sincere intent, as I share some of these things, that you might know that I'm completely transparent about my intentions of the property. I always have been. And I want to be able to help those who are concerned. I was told hang on one second. I was told by the city that I would need to relocate in terms of the property that I had been leasing. I have been leasing a piece of property very close to Tri-City Nursery, right behind the Public Work Building. The city's known that I've been there for a number of years. And as I have been there, I have had an operation no different than what I have on this property right now. And in terms of having to leave, I had an opportunity in talking with the city in terms of trying to find property, and this particular property was suggested and recommended to me. I had been doing a project. You may have seen that little cabin that's over there by the in the park there that represents the Daughters of the Pioneers, Utah Pioneers, that cabin. And I donated the landscaping and the stone walkways and so forth there. And while I was there, because I was so concerned about trying to find property, there's just not a lot of property around here. And in the process of recognizing that we're going to be building a building, I'm building a building in the Kaysville Business Park. I will be building here shortly in the next couple weeks. And my partner is Chris Martineau, who's also a great contractor. And I just needed to find a home to be able to place my materials, as well as trees, plant material, other vegetation, and so forth. And Vance Garfield was on this project, and he recommended this property to me, and he indicated this Jordan Kamak, who I had never met before, and the Old Mill HOA. So in the beginning, I thought this was the Old Mill HOA, and went to the Old Mill HOA because I wanted to make absolutely sure that there wouldn't be a problem in being in there. And when I went to that meeting, and there was 70 to 100 people there, the place was packed. It was over at Boondocks. There were a lot of concerns and questions that were raised. And I told them specifically, in a very transparent manner, of what I wanted to do, that I needed to move my equipment, I needed to be able to move my materials to another location, and this looked like this would be a good fit. And again, what's already been reiterated, there were 4 other people that were also interested in the property. I went through the due diligence and trying to figure out how we would best try to purchase the property, and it was recommended that bids would be given. I didn't know till tonight that other bids had never been received. And I put a bid together through Bruff Realty, and then the bid was accepted. At that point, I thought, let's talk to the neighbor next door. And the Spanish lady who spoke here, I think her name is Nancy Villamizar. I had my son Taylor go over and talk with her. He's fluent in Spanish, and they had a really good conversation. And she had no problem with us buying the property. In fact, we moved everything over, and to this day, I was actually surprised because I was going to say that she's been a pleasant neighbor, and I had never heard a complaint, and that material has been on there since October. I've never received a complaint. As far as I know, the city has never received a complaint until we tried to rezone the property. So in October 2016, I moved the materials that I had stored on the rented Kaysville property lot over to the Burton Lane property. And at this time, I also built the bins and material and brought in many loads of gravel so as to create a clean, dust-free environment. The entire property, at least what we've done so far to this point, has gravel. Now, we're still in the very beginning stages. I wish we could have done more.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
You bet.
Please? So during your time of building this up, of building these cement bunkers to house material and moving things onto this and stuff, at this point, as it still is today, right now, this is still zoned R120. Okay, so I'm assuming that somebody like yourself who's a business owner, who's owned multiple businesses, who's active in the community and things along those lines, you obviously must know code, city ordinance, and code, right?
I know a little bit, but let me, so.
No, hold on a minute, wait.
Yeah, go ahead, sure.
So I guess where I'm going with this is, I mean, doing all this improvement and stuff to this while it's still zoned residential, I mean, did you ever stop to think for a second that, maybe, should I be doing this?
Yeah, I did.
Or not? Or to hell with it, I'm just going to keep going anyway? Or should I probably get a hold of the city and see what they think? Or what should I do?
So what I did is, in the process of purchasing the property, one of the contingencies is I didn't want to buy the property unless I could do what I was already doing. I indicated that to Steve Bruff. I don't know if he's here tonight. Not here, okay. And he contacted the city. I also talked to the city, some different individuals, and asked if there would be a problem in relocating our materials to that area. And they said no, there would be not a problem whatsoever in doing that. It's exactly, it hasn't changed whatsoever in terms of what I was doing there before or to this other area. Part of this property, there's about 50 feet of the property that, and it's really hard to tell from this, and I'll show you a slide in a minute, but part of the property is actually the city's property. There's 50 feet, and it is zoned light industrial. So part of this area is already light industrial. Okay, I don't have to walk across the road. I don't have to go across the sidewalk or anything like that. Part of that property is light industrial. What I was told from the city was that it was okay to move, it was okay to go in there, yet at some future point, it might be a good idea to have it zoned light industrial, similar to what was across the street. So yeah, I did. I received the blessing from the city. I received the blessing from making sure that the Bruff Realty was in the loop. I received the blessing from the HOA, and again, I apologize, or I would have gone to the other HOA. I really thought I was doing my due diligence in meeting with these people. Didn't have any idea that this was a different association until later. But what's ironic is over 6 months goes by and not one complaint to the city. Not one. I didn't receive a single complaint. All of my equipment was there. Okay, now some of the pictures you may have seen, there's some trailers and there's some other things. A lot of the time in the summer months, that stuff is on projects and so forth. From October up until now, up until just recently, because we just barely started landscaping again because of the poor weather, I had everything there. I had tractors, I had trailers, I had everything that I own on that property. Not one complaint that I'm aware of. I talked to Lyle about that. He confirmed to me that he had never received a complaint up until the time that we tried to rezone it.
How long has it been have you had everything on there, in your words?
Since October. Well, we were moving some stuff over this spring, and that's where a lot of this noise and so forth happened, because we were under the gun pressure-wise to get our stuff off the property. I had broke my leg. I had an 18-inch titanium rod put in my leg, and it made it difficult for me to help coordinate this. And so I received the blessing from the city that we could remove the rest of it this spring. And incidentally, this property, in terms of these trucks, I don't know what trucks they're talking about. All these big trucks. I have one semi, and the rest of them are 1-ton pickups or 3/4-ton pickups. We do not use this property to store lots and lots of material. You know, when we do a landscape project, what happens is the materials are dropped off at the job site, and then we work there. This is for when I need a scoop of topsoil. I need 2 scoops of bark. We ran short on bark. It was kind of ironic that I had a project where they said, would you like all these boulders? There was a lot of boulders, and I said, and they were smaller boulders, so you don't really use them in rock retaining walls as much. And I said, I'd love those, you know, maybe, you know, we could do something with them sometime. And so we brought them. I mean, typically that's not what's, you know, our business in terms of that. Normally a rock is going to be delivered on site at a particular home. So all of these trucks and all of this, hey, I tell my guys what to do every single day. And they may go over there in the morning and pick up a scoop of topsoil or something like that. But they may be there once or twice in a particular day, and then they may not be there for a week, just depending on what we need. And so all these trucks running up and down and so forth. And I've also asked my employees to drive on Deseret Drive, which is a really, in my opinion, a pretty safe road. You've got boondocks and Tri-City, and they come down, and there's just not as many residential area, you know, in that particular spot. A short time later, I was requested, I requested the help of the city to help me gain the necessary paperwork to have this changed to light industrial, as the city had recommended. I was invited a few weeks later to meet with you, commissioners, as the Kaysville Planning Commission, where my application was considered.
So what prompted that? What prompted you going to the city?
Just the fact that...
Did you receive complaints? Did
no,
you have...
not at all.
You woke up one morning and decided
yeah,
that...
no, I'll tell you what happened. So what happened is we decided we wanted to plant trees. Okay, I don't want to have enemies. Okay, I don't like confrontation. Okay, I try to be a nice person. So I thought this would be a really good opportunity to plant a lot of my Austrian pines that I have and beautify this area. Okay, I was never recommended by anybody. This is what I wanted to do on my own dime and have this look good. So my son met with Lyle over at the property because we wanted to gain permission from the city to plant these trees, make sure everything was in accordance, because we, again, don't really know specifically the ordinances, and making sure it'd be okay. And again, it was brought up that, hey, you know what, it's probably getting to a point that you need to have this zoned as light industrial. My son reiterated that to me. I said, let's just go ahead and do it.
Stroh, I believe according to our previous meetings, he also had a desire to build a building.
Correct, right.
On the site,
And I
and
think that's what
that
may
may
have
have been the
triggered that,
catalyst
actually.
as
Right.
well.
So due to increased business there and in and out and things along those lines, that's when essentially you decided to say, hey, you know what, okay, now we're going to follow a proper procedure here and get this zoned, and this is where we're at.
I
right
didn't
now.
think there was a problem, honestly, I didn't think there was a problem in there in the beginning because I'd received the blessing from the city.
Regardless. You
Regardless.
received permission from the city, I
Right.
get that, okay, good.
Yeah. And so, but anyway, and going back to that where you whisper in one person's ear and it goes to another and goes to another, let me give you a few examples. Could you show a couple pictures for me, please? The first picture.
Off your...
Yeah, off mine. So there's been a lot of misrepresentations. I didn't get a chance to go to the city council because I wasn't invited. I should have probably been more proactive in realizing that it was coming up, and I just was told I was going to get a letter and so forth. And so when it went to the city council, nobody was there to defend it or explain some of these things. things ran wild, okay? So if we could go to the first picture, please.
I just didn't know. I was there. And, yeah, so I heard it.
Okay. So one of the things that was said in the council was the fence has been severely damaged. In fact, you heard that tonight even. This is a Google Earth picture back in 2010. It shows the same damage. So we haven't done any damage. Now, I have every intent to fix that fence. I just haven't had time. We just haven't been there long enough.
You talking like right here?
Yeah, do you see that right there? In fact, let's see the, picture number 2.
It's working on my screen.
Oh, you're okay.
So, orient me. Where am I standing on the street?
So this is actually at the very, very panhandle of the property.
So is this going down into Old
Yes.
Mill? Got
So
it.
this is going down into Old Mill. And again, there's all these holes in the fence and so forth, and broken fence, and it was kind of insinuated that maybe some of our boulders had broke the fence and this and that and the other, and it's just simply not the case. It's just mistaken. Because the way that it is today is the same way that it was 7 years ago. Okay, can we go back?
Jim, just real quickly, from
There
the
we go.
pictures that we were given, that doesn't appear to be the case.
Well, we have another broken portion of the fence, we think. If you could.
It's real hard to determine where this is in comparison to that, but regardless,
I'm going to show you another picture that shows a bunch.
this hole's a whole lot bigger than that one.
No, I'm going to show you some more.
Okay.
Okay, so here's looking southward.
Okay.
I don't know if you can
And that's-
blow that
The
up.
second one is what we're looking at right there.
No, it's the next one
You've
down.
got
Yeah,
big
the second.
sections
Yeah.
all the way through here that are broken.
Okay.
I'm not aware that we've broken anything. And
Yeah, that's a little clearer, that broken fence picture is what we're looking at right here, and it's the same thing.
Okay, another misinterpretation was that somebody had commented at the city council is that we're destroying the road. And there were some holes in the road and this and that and the other, and that's simply just not true. It's not the case. The city officials will tell you that the asphalt contractor didn't do the road right, and they're over there refixing it right now. Okay? Another thing that was mentioned was that one fellow said that his home is only 10 feet away from the property. Can you go to the next slide, please? Now, in reality, what we're seeing here is where the fence is that's broken. It's right along this area right here. Okay, that's where the fence is. We are 80 feet, not 60. I thought it was 62 until I went and measured it. We have 80 feet between the fence that is on our property line and the fence that's clear across the walkway area. So there's 80 feet, and so if, and I don't know, and maybe that was just a mistake on the individual's part in saying that he was 10 feet away from the property. So in reality, if you take that 80 feet, and this home is for sure the closest home here, there's another 35 feet. So you're looking at, what's that, 105 feet from their home. Now from their backyard, you're 80 feet. That's more than double the width of Burton Lane in terms of the road itself. Another claimant indicated that from their viewpoint, it was going to be like a giant billboard from their backyard. And that's not the case either. In fact, walking behind the property, there are a couple of openings. There's an opening here, and this is a, what do you want to call it, a panoramic view of this, all of the property across the back. There's all these big existing native trees. There is some areas in here, and I had recommended in the last meeting that we screen it. And these are the size of trees that would be going into that area. So from that viewpoint, if you stand at the right angle where those openings are, this is what you will see. Another claim that my yard was being used for unsightly garbage and debris storage, and that's simply not the case either. We have been in the process of cleaning this property. I cannot begin to tell you how much junk was on this property. And so the pictures and things that we're taking of this was areas that we had cleaned and trees that we have cut down, things like that. We just hadn't had a chance to haul away. One individual claimed that there's lots of noise. And I can assure you that maybe when we were moving in originally, because we were bringing lots of trucks down to try to get all the materials in there, that may have been the case. But however, it's simply the fact that what's happening is we're rarely there. Again, as I mentioned before, my bigger bulk materials are delivered to job sites, and there just isn't a lot of traffic from our vehicles. Another individual indicated that their house was shaking and rattling. That concerns me. I would never want my home to do that either. I mean, that'd be awful and so forth. But by the same token, and you know, I wouldn't have any problem doing an experiment. I just don't think it's as big of a problem as what's being suggested in this area. I mean, we're talking 105 to 110 feet away. In terms of the dust, I'm very sensitive about that. In fact, we also talked about the entryway, that it's dangerous. If you remember the last meeting, I indicated that I wanted to change that. It's dangerous. It's not only dangerous for the citizens, it's dangerous for my employees. I have little kids myself, and I would want them to be safe. And so we want to do everything we could do on this property to have it safe, and it needs to come out on a 90-degree angle instead of on a kind of a 45-degree angle. As you may recall, I indicated I tried to buy 1,000 square feet of property from the lady to the south of me, the Latin lady who spoke here. And we offered, I think, originally about $8,000 for 1,000 square feet of property. And that was rejected, and a $12,000 figure came back. Now that was as of, how long ago? That would have been as of this winter, sometime in the winter. And so, but since we weren't able to buy that and work that out, what we can do is we'll just move the property further so that into usable space where we'd be stockpiling things and so forth. The pallet thing may be a concern. That bothers me, especially when a gentleman mentioned that it's leaning or something like that. I don't want any problems. And so if that is the case, we'll fix that and we'll change those. I mean, we've had them stacked before. We just don't want to have any liability or issues with people having problems and so forth. And so that's an easy fix. I also learned from several sources that people kept saying that I was building a building, this big building. In fact, there was this statement on Facebook that Kelly McFarland, my attorney, will talk about just for a moment, that clearly identifies that people were being misled in terms of what was happening to our property. This was just last week. It was a couple of days before, anyway, it was just last week. It's been less than a week. Indicates we're building this big building and that they need to get together as a community to stop this action, which was just not true. Can we go to the next?
It is your intent to build an outbuilding there, though, right?
Just like a shed or a small garage or just something to house small things. No, a shed.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. This is my building permit because I started to think that maybe people are confused about my property that I'm building a building on over in the Kaysville Business Park. This is my building permit application. Again, this is super close to being started in the next couple of weeks. Could you go to the next slide, please? Okay, this is the lot over there. Again, it's 528 north, 900 west. I just want to make sure everybody is clear that there is no big building that's being built. Next slide, please. Here's the building. This building is not being built on this property. But again, if you go back to that Facebook post that was sent out to the community, it really was misleading. When I recognized that there was a major problem, because I had the chance to watch the city council meeting, I mean, I was just blown away. I was just in shock. So I thought, what can I do? And so my wife and I talked about it and said, let's just try to be proactive. Let's just try, you know, we've been running this business for 32 years. We've tried really hard. We haven't, you know, probably made friends with everybody, but for the most part, I think we've done a good job. I think if we just explain to people what we're trying to do, like we did with the other HOA, we'll have support. As we met and attempted to contact some of the neighbors and so forth, at the end of the day, our conversations were helpful and positive, but there were still a few that just wouldn't believe what we were trying to do there. I tried to reassure these individuals that the only building that perhaps might eventually be built on this property would be a shed or small garage. Additionally, while I met with certain individuals on site, I tried to give them a perspective in terms of what I wanted to do in terms of trees and vegetation and so forth, so that it would be an asset and it wouldn't be a place that was dumped. When we had been in the process of cleaning that place up, between couches and fence and chairs and junk, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's come out of that. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is a picture so you kind of get your perspective of where we're at here. This is where Deseret Drive comes up around the corner and then hooks into Burton Lane. Next picture, please. Here is the picture. Here's the perspective. I don't like that. I wouldn't want that in my neighborhood like that. Okay, can you show the next picture? This is what we're proposing. This is what you will see. Not tomorrow, but as soon as those plants go in. I mean, it's instantaneous because those trees are big. They are 15 to 20 foot pine. Next slide, please. Here's another perspective from the corner again, looking across the property. Here we've got this bird's eye view of all these bends. If we could go to the next slide, please. This is what I'm proposing. Okay, next slide, please. This is a perspective off of Burton Lane looking westward. Okay, this is what you see. Next picture, please. This is what I'm proposing. Next slide. This is a perspective from the corner looking mostly northward. This is what you're seeing. That is all, in fact, if you go back that again, that is all, that entire hillside is zoned light industrial. My property doesn't start until you get down to this fence area here. That is city property. We're proposing that we landscape the area like this. Now, you know, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. For me, if that was in my neighborhood, I'm okay with it. And I sincerely apologize if others don't think that that's a good thing. So again, the purpose of our site is so that we can keep landscape materials, including plant material and trees. Part of the zoning of the residential R20, is that what it's called, R120? Yeah, R120, says you can do agricultural type things. That's part of our business in terms of having trees and vegetation and things in there as a holding facility. I believe the property would be screened, adding aesthetic value to the neighborhood. In the past, this property has unfortunately been a dumping ground for many. With the many easements that the property has, there's just absolutely no way to build a big home or any kind of home or even big building. It's just not available. There's just not a way to do it. Again, the property across the street, could we go back to, or maybe the next slide? The property across the street looking eastward, which is the, I guess, the storage units, Burton storage units, that is 100% light industrial. You see the 50 feet of property, the yellow line, that is city property, that is light industrial. The 150 feet that we have in our property is not. The property to the right where the little Google Earth sign is, that is all light industrial as far as I know, except for I think that it was pointed out today that there might be a little section right there. From what I understand, the city bought that property from the same HOA that I bought my property from. There's, has been piles of rubble, concrete, asphalt, those kinds of things. That's not me. Those are not my trucks that are coming out of that area. What happens if I sell the property? What happens one day, you know, Jim Puffer is not here? I think and I've tried to explain this to some of the homeowners, but they, for whatever reason, I don't know, just don't trust government. I try to explain that there's a development agreement, that this stays the way that it does unless somebody comes in here and tries to change it again. So the $64,000 question is, what's best for this property? At the end of the day, if the Planning Commission, regardless to what's happened in the past, with city leaders giving me their okay, and they feel that it's not the best interest of the city and residents, then I'll find another place. I'll just have to chalk it up to good experience and try to learn the best that I can. I mean, the last thing I want to do is be driving down the road and have somebody flip me off. My kid goes, "Dad, is that one of the haters over there in the West Kaysville area?" You know, my reputation means a lot to me. I want my kids to be able to grow up in this community. One of the things that was said in the Kaysville City Council that hurt, it really hurt, was the fact that Jim Puffer is not a citizen of Kaysville City. Well, I have been for many years. I live in Fruit Heights now. We kind of consider Kaysville part of our back neighborhood. But I have been here working in Kaysville for many years. And I've worked very, very hard to try to be honest and trustworthy in everything that I do. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you.
Do you mind if he just takes a minute?
Sure.
I don't know if we want to hear from another lawyer, do we? Anybody want to hear from another lawyer? I don't think they do. So I just have one thing quickly. I think these public hearings are very helpful. I think it's really important that we hear from people we couldn't meet with beforehand. And I think it's important that the people who are concerned have a chance to hear facts. And I think that's what the Planning Commission needs to concentrate on, is the facts. Kelly McFarland. When it comes to petitions, I think they have some value. I don't think it's something that you disregard and exclude. But the problem with a petition, the reason you have a public hearing, is because it's the opportunity to have people come down and voice their opinions and also have to listen to somebody else's opinion. When you do a petition, you are excluding the ability to know what was said to the people who signed the petition. That's the reason they're not very helpful, because you don't know what was said. For example, we have a Facebook post that says that there's going to be a big building built there, and that Jim Puffer put holes in fences. And if those are the things that are represented, then of course they're going to sign. And that's the reason the petitions are not, and that's the reason we have a public hearing, instead of just simply saying, you get as many people signed as you can, we'll get all ours and we'll put them on, and whoever has the most wins. That's just not the way it works. That's the reason you have a planning commission. When you do zoning, there's always going to be a line where you have residential and it changes to another zone. And of course, anyone who is in that residential is going to say, hey, I bought this knowing that that was what it is, and I don't want you to change it. It's really understandable. But it's part of a city's job to do organized planning of the city. And that's what's going on here. And so we have a city who buys property from them, and they actually changed it to light industrial. And now the exact adjacent property, Jim Puffer wants to change it to light industrial, and he's coming to change it. There's enforcement arms of the city. And I realize there were no complaints, but I guess there could have been. And whether there's no basis in a planning commission to say the reason we're going to deny it is because you're in violation. A planning commission can say, we want you to take it back and then come back to us. They could do that. But it's not a basis for saying, hey, the reason we're going to deny it, everything looks good, trees look good. It's actually a good organizational plan for the city of Kaysville, but we're going to deny it because we think there's some violation there. We actually heard of several here that, had animals already on their property and they changed it. And nobody said, the reason we're going to deny it is because you did it for 4 months first, and then you came to us. It's just not a consideration. It would be inappropriate. So those are the two things that I just want to bring up. I actually was going to address some of the others, but, Jim did such a good job, I think. Shut the lawyer up and sit down, right? So I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Just 1 second. Is there anyone else that wants to go ahead?
Hi, I'm Michael Hennessy. My family and I just moved in October on Appaloosa. We live directly opposite the Romes. Mr. Rome spoke, I think, the second speaker in the meeting. And I just wanted to share my personal experience so that you could maybe personalize it a bit. There are some folks in here, by the way, it seems like, who have some alternative careers in either Congress or as farmers with the amount of manure running around here. But what we've experienced since moving in is a dramatic change in the property, and it doesn't look anything like it did when we moved in, and that's just the fact. When we moved here from Florida. We had this exact same situation, a different body, but the same types of rules, where someone moved in, and I'm just the new guy, so I don't know anybody here in town. I don't know anybody's reputations. I'm not dealing in theory or in anything but facts. And what happened in our previous neighborhood was that there was an exact same discussion, exact same promises, obviously different people involved, and the bottom line is that none of it happened. And so when we turned around to move from, we were living in Florida, here to Kaysville and tried to sell our house, there was a dramatic decrease in value. In fact, our home alone lost more value than what Mr. Puffer paid for the piece of land that we're talking about. And that was just one home in the community. So I just would suggest that I think we need to deal in facts here and not intentions, in things that are actually in writing and not in hearsay. And I'm just sharing you the facts of our personal experience, and it's why we're opposed to this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Again, I'm Nancy. I think that's an easy name to remember. The Spanish lady speaks English, and please, if you got offended because you were not from Kaysville, imagine how I get offended when somebody tells me the Spanish lady or tells me about by my race. I'm sorry to bring that up. The reason why I did not bring any opposition to this before, when I met with Mr. Puffer's son, is because Taylor, yes, with Taylor, I'm sorry, is because what was said didn't sound as obnoxious as it was. I assume that the property was zoned residential. Slowly, a little bit at a time, things has been put in, pile up. It wasn't all at once. It was slowly. When now I see in the spring, it's completely different. Why the dust has been different if the trucks are not here? Why there is difference? Because I have to change the filters on my house more often. Also, I didn't come to the first hearing because I didn't know. I noticed from the Facebook post because I got a notice on the mail that really now in these days, I pay my bills online. I don't need to see and open all my mail at a specific time, so I didn't get the notice. And I never saw a sign when I passed by my house all the time that said that there was going to be changes. So I think that's why there wasn't any mistakes. I didn't come and complain. So I just wanted to let you know that if also there's all these beautiful things, and I was told that when I met with Taylor that there were going to be these beautiful trees coming in. That was back in the fall. The best time to plant trees is the fall. Why don't you start planting the trees so they can start getting better and then bring the rest of the things in? So please consider that. And yes, I am opposed, and I'm the one that lives right next to it. And have to be careful in telling my kids, don't go over there because those things are going to fall over you. It's not right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, we all appreciate your input and your time spent here. I know it's been a considerable amount of time. We're going to close the public hearing unless there's anyone that's... Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you for your time. We'll now shift to a discussion amongst the commission. If there's questions to be asked.
I think the vast majority of my questions were answered along the way here. I took the liberty to ask questions when they were presented, so I kind of did it fluidly as we were moving along here. So I think from my perspective of things, I think I'm all right.
I have a question for city staff. It's been brought up a number of times that there were no complaints. Have we received complaints about this property? Dust, noise, trucks?
We've not received any formal complaints from this, so I've not been made aware of any or talked to anybody regarding it. Early on when I wish I could give you the dates, but some time ago I did notice some mud tracking into the street. I think it was a springtime. I personally reached out to Mr. Puffer to request some of the gravel be put in place that's there now to help avoid that. But that was a staff observation, not from any input from the community.
Okay, thank you.
It helped me a lot to understand something that wasn't in our paperwork, that the HOA, the neighborhood most impacted, is not the one that sold the property. That was a big thing right there for me, because I think it just made it so that harder for people to be aware, I guess, and on all sides of potential issues. Those discussions, by not any bad intent, but those discussions didn't happen with the people who would be right next to it.
One of the side issues here is the city's use of that property just north of Burton when it makes the curve to go east, and distinguishing between the city's use of that property and Mr. Puffer's use of his property, and whether those trucks, whether the fugitive dust, whether the noise is, how much of that's attributable to the city's use of that property just north or Mr. Puffer's property. And I don't even think there's a way we can distinguish between that, but that's a difficult issue for me. It's troubling. Do you have any sense of the city's use of that property?
I know the city uses that property, I would probably call it reasonably extensively, for storage of materials,
Yeah.
largely used materials. What we do is we stockpile removed concrete and also asphalt. If we get a water leak in the road, they have to dig up a certain section of asphalt. That can't be taken to the dump. It has to be disposed of appropriately. We take it here, and then once or twice a year, we'll bring in a machine and grind it down to a size that then is usable as road base to make the next repair on the next water leak.
Yeah.
So there is use there. There is a big stockpile of topsoil. It's not near as big as it used to be. Came off the farm when the Smith's grocery store was built. It was stockpiled there. It's been used on projects throughout the city since that time. So yeah, there would be, and I don't know, I couldn't say that it's once a day or 10 trucks a day, but there are vehicles coming and going to that property.
Well, in my mind, there are two main concerns. One is the aesthetics of it, and the other is the industrial traffic, for lack of a better word, for Mr. Puffer's property. And if the aesthetics are addressed or largely addressed by the trees, and I'm very familiar with this area, I live in this area, the property didn't look that great beforehand. If we can get some trees so the aesthetics are better, then if we can figure out how much of this traffic, how much of this, the negative effects of the industrial use is attributable to Mr. Puffer's use, that to me makes a big difference. And I don't know if there's a traffic study out there that we can count how many times it's the city trucks versus Mr. Puffer's trucks, sound, fugitive dust, all of that stuff. But to me, that's troubling, because not only the sound and the dust, but also the safety, traffic. As I expressed when we addressed this last time, I think that entrance is very difficult. And I spend a lot of time on those turns, and there's a lot of, I think it's a bad section of road without Mr. Puffer's property and use of it. It's difficult. We have a lot of kids going to high school. Not that all kids that go to high school are bad drivers, but some of them are. I have one of them, I think.
Be honest, they all are.
He's pretty safe when I see him drive. But that's the concern I have. And so if we can address the aesthetic, that property is going to be there. And the question I have is, what are we going to do with it? Is it just going to be an empty field that's going to gather people's trash? And if we can get somebody that's going to use the property and improve the property and make it look better, that's great. If that improved use also creates traffic concerns and health concerns and enjoyment of life concerns, then that's something we need to consider. But I just don't know how much Mr. Puffer's use is creating those problems, or how much of it's the city's use. And I don't know how to tell that. Is it a traffic study that, Andy, would that be the way to tell the difference?
A traditional traffic study counts cars at a point on the road.
Right.
So it'd be very difficult under that form of a study to know where they're coming from or where they're going. You just know that there's 100 cars a day going past this point. I believe there is some equipment out there that is some kind of video that you would have to point at, presumably Puffer's driveway, and then you could isolate which cars are actually just coming in and out of his yard.
And the cities, right? I don't want to throw the city under the bus here, but that's part of the problem, I think, is that we have a dump area right there.
Yeah,
and it's light industrial, so it's not in front of us right now, right? That's not like that's the question in front of the commission, but in order to decide how much traffic is attributable to
the real question is, how much additional traffic is Mr. Puffer's use of the property generating?
Right.
I believe there is a way to do that with some of these video technique things that are out there.
Well,
to that point, that was one of my questions. I know you're not a traffic engineer, so if you want to plead the fifth, for lack of a better term, I understand. Just if you were to guess, or if you're in your educated guess, trips per day for a residential use, single-family residential use, versus trips per day for a use like this, is there a drastic difference, and if so, what would that be, trips per day? See, I told you you could.
There are manuals out there. They're called Trip Generation Manual. It states that an average trip for a single-family residential is about 10 trips per day.
10?
Yes. And then it goes to all other uses or other uses, I should say, and they do counts, and then they calculate averages. The problem here is you've got a very specific use.
Hard to say.
That type of determination wouldn't state with any accuracy what it would be.
Yeah.
If you wanted to put a 7-Eleven on that property, we could go to a convenience store and have a good idea of what that would be. But this type of use would be too variable.
So I have some questions. I don't want to cut you off, though. Are you? So there, I have a number of questions, but there's been some comments and questions about what notice was originally given. Because this is the third time it's been before us. The first one was somewhat of a throwaway. Really, this is the second substantive time, I would say. So will the city just clarify what notice was given? This is my first question, then I have a follow-up question. For the one that we had last time in Planning Commission.
Well, can I just interrupt? Because, I mean, I have that exact same question, and when I read this, I thought, why are we doing this again? And I wish the city council would have been more clear about it. I've ultimately decided that maybe it doesn't matter at this point because we've had this hearing and we have notice and it's worked, and we have people that have that have contributed. And while I think that's an important question on a procedural level, I think before us we've now had that hearing, and we've probably had it twice, but for sure we've had it tonight.
Well, and I completely agree exactly with what you said. My line of questioning is to vindicate the city, because I think that there's some loss of trust with the notice that was done. Yeah. And I'll just save everyone the trouble. My understanding is the notice that was given was in accordance with city ordinances, existing city ordinances, which is in accordance with state law, and that was what the initial notice was given. Is that accurate?
Yes, essentially. So the state law requires that we post public notice on the property and publish a notice within the newspaper of local circulation. So within the Davis Clipper, we post notice and also post an actual sign on the property. In addition to that, as a city policy, we mail adjacent property owners mailed notice. As was previously stated in this case, probably 3 or 4 properties that are directly adjacent to it that aren't just public right-of-way. That was the standard and procedure for all rezones. When the city council was considering this particular item, that came to note of them that probably wasn't sufficient. So again, beyond the statute and ordinance regulations, they asked that we would go 500 feet, which was, I believe, 90 mailers around this property.
So my question was not a comment on the propriety of the notice that was ultimately given. I think personally that a 500-foot buffer on rezones or things of that nature is probably a great idea. But what I wanted to say is the notice that was originally given is it's not like the city is going rogue. The city follows law, and they do what they are required to do.
And did what they were required to do.
Right, exactly. Now, like I say, that is not it's a different question to say what notice should we give. That is a question for the city council, maybe even a question for the state legislature. But the city staff did what they were supposed to do. So.
I think that's a good point. I was a little bit disturbed with the allegations and the aspersions that were cast towards the staff and the city as to how they operated, and that was that was bothersome. But that's the way it works. But I do think that that's a good question to ask, and I appreciate that clarification that the city did what they were supposed to do. And this is, I mean, look at the shape of this property. It's not a traditional shape of property, and giving the notice to the neighbors wasn't really adequate for this circumstance. But that's not to say that the city didn't do what it was supposed to do. It's just, I'm glad the city council looked at it and said, hey, we need to have better notice, so now that we have better input.
Yeah. I was in that city council meeting and was glad that there were residents who attended and took the opportunity to speak in the public comment section. And so I think that it's been very valuable tonight because this is what we did not have before. And for myself, how it's helped me is that because I too use the trail, cycle, and run, and have for many, many years on that road. Big country and unfinished, and always has right there. And it's very dangerous where the trail crosses and where children have to go. And as it curves, it's dangerous for me as an adult, you know, being heads up and watching, and with the road not being very wide, you just have to be very careful and face the traffic. So I can see why there are concerns. So looking at it as a commissioner before, when I went and looked, I felt like it looked better than it had in the past. But that was just looking at it for me from the street, looking down briefly for 5 minutes. I don't live there, you know? And so I definitely have a shared concern. The petition doesn't sway me one way or another. What affects me are the comments, the people who take the time to speak civilly of their own experience. And I am concerned because there's been such a change for those people who live there and are having to look at it. And I had somewhere, I couldn't even see it, but somewhere in the space behind where I live, there was some construction project where boulders came crashing down, and I couldn't even see where it was going on, but it was very loud, and I could feel, you know, my home shake. So I understand it was good to hear Mr. Puffer say that having the boulder dropping thing is not a normal practice for that piece of property. However, there certainly are big areas of rocks and how they drop and what that sounds like, and you know what dust kicks up out of rocks is, I can imagine that it could be troublesome if that's where you live all the time. So I also feel just very sorry for the circumstances of Mr. Puffer, because I believe he has been honest and tried hard to do the right thing as a business owner, where he used to be and then couldn't be and needed to find a place, and the city was trying to be helpful. One HOA made a great decision probably for what was good for that HOA, not so good for the HOA that neighbors it. And I understand that communication sometimes doesn't pass as well or as timely as we would like it to, because we're busy with our own lives and we're just unaware until it gets to a certain point, and then you become aware and concerned. And so those are my thoughts so far.
Josh, go ahead.
I'm not going to be able to answer or ask everything, but there was some comments about that Jim Puffer Landscaping had come in and started just storing things and using the property in what some might say an industrial way without approval, and I think, or without even any awareness from the city. And I think what Jim said was he talked to the city and was given at least some, I don't know, some acquiescence in that. What exactly was the determination when, I'm assuming, the city staff looked at the existing zone and said, yes, I think even Lyle mentioned at the very beginning, it's sort of an ambiguous area of the code maybe, I'm not sure. Yes, some usage can be started on the site. What was that conversation?
I am probably the employee that Mr. Puffer talked to. I recall talking to him last fall. There is nothing in the ordinance that has a line that when you cross it, you're out of compliance in this regard. You can go have a pile of gravel dumped in your driveway and nobody's going to complain about it. So now when you have 2 piles, when you have 6 piles, there's not a line. So as was mentioned just recently, he brought the stuff in a little bit at a time over the winter. It wasn't one day it was empty, the next day there was
Right.
200,000 tons of material on it, whatever it is. From our perspective, and when I talked with Mr. Puffer, and a lot of it's, as he expressed, the whisper around the circle game, what I hear and what I recall versus what he hear, I'm not going to argue with that. What my recollection is that I said, that's fine, it's quasi-agricultural use, but if it becomes too much of a business, then we're going to have to look at it. My impression is that he began to put stuff on there. It grew slowly and slowly. Lyle noticed that it was starting to look like a commercial business, so he contacted Mr. Puffer and said, hey, let's see where we're going and do
Maybe over the line.
We're getting to the far end of the gray area.
Yeah.
So it was mentioned also by one of the comments that there were other businesses in town that were shut down. We went through this exact same process with those other businesses. We determined that there was a non-compliance. The first thing we do is give people the opportunity to bring it into compliance. One way to bring it into compliance is change the zoning so that what they're doing is appropriate. And that's the process. If the zoning is denied, then we'll work with him to draw back the use of that property to what we feel is appropriate. We may even come and ask you what's appropriate because, again, the ordinance does not define that specifically, that once you bring one more rock in, you're out of compliance.
Right. It's a subjective call on enforcement.
Yes, sir.
I have other things, but one thing I will say, and many of you here today might already realize this, but just to clarify, the city council is the one that makes the ultimate decision on this. We only recommend what the city council should do. We are not elected. We are volunteers. The city council is elected by you. They get to decide. Sometimes they listen to what we have to say. Sometimes they don't listen to what we have to say. So I'd just throw that out there. That's probably all I have for now.
You know, I have a comment I'd like to make just to address something that, quite frankly, disturbed me a little bit. One gentleman, I apologize, I'm not great with names either, came up and said, you guys have already made up your mind, and this is ridiculous. Haven't you seen all this evidence? Why would you think that based on looking at our faces, I believe? And, you know, I'm disappointed by that, and if I came across as my mind is made up, it's perhaps because it was 2 weeks ago. 4 weeks ago, we were going to have a public hearing on this. Mr. Puffer had some health issues. We canceled it, so we held another meeting on this 2 weeks ago. Lyle explained in that we had had a public hearing. We didn't have to have another public hearing, but we did 2 weeks ago. No one came. So we based a decision on there appeared to be no input from the neighbors.
Right.
Typically, when you have no input from the neighbors, it's kind of well, it must be sort of a non-issue. Nobody's here to complain. No one's here to say anything about it. So we went off that assumption. So we discussed the issue back and forth. Mr. Puffer came and at great length gave a presentation that seemed very favorable, putting in trees, blocking view, making it more aesthetically appealing. That was what was presented to us. There was no other side of this. There was no, he's breaking the law. You've got to do something. There was none of that. And ultimately, our decision was to recommend approval. This is all from the minutes, which I looked at extensively. We voted 6-1 in favor of approval, and the one negative vote actually said, I wanted to vote yes, but I think we were too restrictive because we put restrictions on that a development agreement be put in place.
That stays into the
trees
future.
be planted, that a fence be maintained. And the seventh commissioner thought, you know what, I don't think we need to do that because it's already restrictive. So I'm going to vote against it because we're asking too much of him. So when you're saying, we think you guys already have your mind made up, well, yeah, that's because we did 2 weeks ago, because we had no other evidence, we had nothing else to go on. And I'll tell you, for the first hour and a half, yeah, I honestly believe that we may have had Beelzebub in our presence here, and he was trying to corrupt West Kaysville, for heaven's sakes. But it was nice to have the devil come up and explain that maybe he's not quite as evil as he appeared on screen and in handout and by pictures, and to see that holes in fences existed 7 years ago and that really not his fault, and piles of rock, in my opinion, don't appear to look like they're in danger of tipping on to the small children who play on them. I'm not sure, so I apologize to anyone if it comes across as though we had previously made up our minds to approve this. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you hearing your voice. But like Josh said, ultimately, this isn't our decision. It's the city council's decision. We make a recommendation, and we do try and weigh all aspects of this. We look at it and say, we have one group of individuals who were not consulted in the sale of this because they had nothing to do with it, who are against this. We have apparently about an equal number of individuals who were part of the homeowners association, part of the sale, who thought this would be a good idea. So while I appreciate the petition, it seems to represent an equal number to those who apparently are in favor of this because they knew what they were getting. So I'm kind of weighing this as balanced. About half of the people in Kaysville that are aware of this are for it, and about half of the people in Kaysville that are aware of this are against it. So hopefully you can see what we're looking at a little bit when we're trying to judge this. Ultimately, we want something that will make this piece of property better for everybody. Whether it's Jim take a few rocks off of it and we go back to just status quo, we just sort of leave it as it is and ask him not to use it quite as much as he is, or we recommend an approval for something and require him, like we did before, you have to plant some trees, you have to maintain a fence, you've got to make improvements on this drive, which is probably the worst drive in Kaysville, that little entry cow path. Yeah, we agree there needs to be some change to that property. I am troubled. I think other commissioners probably feel the same way. It's how much of this is Mr. Puffer's fault, how much of it is the city's fault. I don't live anywhere near there, but it seems like I've had a lot of dust this year too. I don't know if that's Jim's fault. Maybe it is. Last time I checked, I live in a desert. I just assume a certain amount of dust. I actually moved to Kaysville from Florida as well. I didn't have any dust in Florida. I had humidity. I think it was a pretty good trade, quite frankly. I'll take the dust. So this is a tough decision because I, again, look at this as we did a couple of weeks ago. What's best for the property, what's best for the community, what's best for the neighbors. It's a tough choice. It's a tough decision.
I'll keep my remarks brief. I still have, so as a couple of my other commissioners have echoed, a cherry-picked petition isn't going to sway me one way or the other. In fact, that's, I don't want to say it's irrelevant. I realize that there's emotion, there's things behind it and stuff. I get that. I've been involved in politics for a long time. I've canvassed neighborhoods. I've done all that. So, but what I will say, though, is based on my roster that I've been keeping here, it looks like the score is about 14-4. And we've got 14 against this development. Most of those folks living in and around and adjacent to the property. And the 4 folks that are for it are 1 resident the applicant, his lawyer, and the man who sold it to him. So, I mean, based on those numbers, that you know, I think it's kind of easy to tell where the energy is in this room this evening. I understand that there's a lot of moving parts to this. There's one thing that I can't, that doesn't really escape me throughout all this, and even 2 weeks ago too, or a month ago actually, when we first did this too, I kept on thinking to myself, and I never really verbalized it, which I probably should have then, but I kept on thinking, why in the hell is he putting all this material on here? Why is he doing this? To say it's zoned agricultural, I mean, come on, Mr. Puffer, that's a stretch, man. I mean, I think you can probably attest to that. I mean, and building it up and building it up and building it up and building it up. You know, this is a delicate area here. You know, we've got a lot of roads, a lot of intersection, a lot of things going on and stuff. The driveway is wholly inadequate, without question. I mean, there's absolutely, I mean, hell, that alone, that should have been the first thing that was improved, period. But it hasn't. I mean, it's been there. It still looks the same now as it did then. But is that, we're done? Is that it? 10 o'clock? Pack up, go home? Anyway.
My alarm of my son who's supposed to take his typhoid vaccine. Sorry, my phone's off, but not the alarm apparently.
Okay. Anyway, so I feel as though there's been a lot of things. I don't think Mr. Puffer's been as transparent as he wants to say that he is. I mean, I don't know him outside of this venue here, the few times that we've spoken stuff and everything, I get that. But you know, with due diligence and things along those lines, I think if transparency was paramount, I really would think that, you know, deciding to build this up and make things happen over the past 9 months may not have been something in your best interest, but, you know, I mean, rules are rules and we're all bound by them, and, you know, city code and things along those lines, but, I mean, in my eyes, it looks as though that you said, well, I mean, I'll ask the city and stuff, but I'm going to keep pushing that envelope until we get to a point where it tips, and now all of a sudden we're here and this is where we're at. So I get everything that everybody said here. I understand it. I mean, looking at this from all different angles and objectively, and you know, it's not easy, as my other commissioners have stated here. You know, there are a lot of moving parts. You know, and we are volunteers. I mean, we're appointed by the city to do this job. We do it out of our love for the city. We do it out of, you know, our commitment to this community and things along those lines. I enjoy it. I love doing it. And but I guess that's where I stand with this this evening after looking at everything. So, thanks.
I have one last question. I appreciate Mr. Puffer's proposal, and I suppose there may be some who would probably agree that putting some vegetation along Burton and the other road, I forget what it is better than nothing. Probably doesn't resolve any other concerns for many people, but it's better than, it's at least a good faith effort to do something. My question is, along the trail, so off of Mr. Puffer's property, I believe he showed a slide where he was proposing to plant vegetation within the trail right-of-way, and I believe UTA owns that, is that correct? Or Union Pacific?
UTA owns that, and Kaysville City is responsible for the maintenance through our city.
So who would decide if those trees could be put there?
I believe our Parks Department would be in control of that.
So if that were a direction, I'm not saying it is one way or the other, would the city be willing to entertain some pine trees from Mr. Puffer planted in that trail right-of-way?
I believe they would. We did the similar thing with the Smith's grocery store. We had them improve some of the trail area.
Okay. it's probably no secret that I was the one dissenting vote in last planning commission.
We do have video.
Yeah, right, see, that's what I'm saying, no secret, no secret. And yeah, I did think at that time that this fit and didn't need any more additional conditions. It's probably not a shock that I do still think it fits, and I will list my reasons, but I do think that it warrants something more. And so I would be comfortable if this were to be rezoned, and in fact, I think what I would say is I would recommend it get rezoned with a development agreement that has many of the things that we talked about last time and anything else we want to add into it. Here's the reason why I think I'm okay with this, why I am okay with this. If we literally went out to 30,000 feet, and I don't think we have the entire city's zoning map. There's not much LI in the whole city. Where it is maybe over by the business park. Where else is there light industrial, Andy or Lyle?
Yeah, the light industrial zone is around the Smith's Marketplace, the Kaysville Business Park, surrounding Barnes Park, and this corner.
Okay. So there's no other places, right? I mean,
I believe the other areas, Market Borough, Main Street, are all general commercial or central commercial zoning.
Yeah. And so I admit and I recognize that this is not a clear case, otherwise you all wouldn't be here. But if we are looking at this at 30,000 feet, 30,000 foot level, which is sort of a planning perspective level, we don't even necessarily notice that this parcel is additionally zoned as LI because it's contiguous. There is a portion that it actually touches another LI. And in the majority of the United States, we look at segregating uses. Similar uses go by similar uses. There will be a delineation at some point, and where there is the delineation between incompatible uses, we try to mitigate that. And this is, I think, one of those places where there needs to be a transition, but it's not like we're spot zoning an LI in the middle of somewhere, Kaysville, that's not touching any other LI and makes little sense to put it there. This is right next to I-15, maybe the most intensive roadway in the entire state of Utah. It's less than a par 3 probably away from I-15. And so it's not, I see and I understand all the concerns, and that's why I think this needs to be done right. But I'm not, I think it fits because it's so close to other LI uses. There is a natural built-in buffer with the trail that can even be improved with some vegetation. This is not a suitable property, at least from what the market sounds. It's not very suitable for residential, single-family residential. It sat there, I don't know, we could ask Mr. Kamak how long it sat. Of course, it wasn't on the market, so assuming it wasn't for sale, people aren't going to approach you, but it sat there for a long time without interest. Nobody in the old mill wanted to build a home there. The developer, I'm confident if the developer of Old Mill felt like they could put a home on that property, they wanted to sell an extra lot, but they didn't do that. So it's not a very suitable property for residential use. It's contiguous to LI. I think it makes sense to make it LI with conditions that soften the use. And that's where I'm at right now.
I'm the one that made the motion last time.
Yes.
I put a lot of conditions that we all discussed and were in agreement with because we wanted it to be okay. However, after there was more notice and people shared with others, that there would be a potential rezoning and that they could have an opportunity to speak up about it, I feel like, for me, the bottom line is that if I were living right where Nancy lives, or if I were living on Appaloosa, at this point, all those concerns they've talked about would concern me as well, if I lived right there. So I feel, very sorry for puffers who acted in good faith based on a city recommendation and needing to find another place to be. But my view is different after all the public input of tonight.
Well, I'm just going to be real concise, and maybe it'll be mostly just restating, but I think we can make a development agreement such that this property will look better than it has in the past, and so that'll be an improvement. I am concerned about the traffic, so I would say I'm not ready to recommend it unless we can get some sort of traffic study that would be specific to figuring out how much of this, the negative effects that we've been talking about, are attributable to him, to Mr. Puffer's use. Because I think safety, health, that to me is the biggest concern.
We can provide all the GPS trucks information to the council. It'll show exactly how much in and out.
And I'd love to compare that with what the city's been doing. But that to me is important.
Do you have a history of that, or could you do that going forward?
All the history will be well below 10.
Okay, because honestly, a study would concern me because Mr. Puffer would just call his trucks and say, don't drive on the property for a month.
No, he's saying he's
But if
already
you can
done, right?
provide the history, that eliminates that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be great. So that's my that's the way I'd go.
So that shows, if I understand, let me just connect the dots. All the trucks that come in and off that site have a GPS device, whether it's, okay. And you can see their comings and goings, every one of them, for every day for the last how long?
Since the start of his
Since GPS. No.
occupation here, right?
Okay.
That's all we care about.
Yeah.
We care about 2 years ago.
Well, I mean, so that would answer a question. That would answer. It doesn't sway me. I already said that would be helpful, but I feel like the traffic is already probably insignificant enough. Now, trips, numbers of trips. I see the issue with safety on the road with the speed and the dump trucks, but you could look at any intersection in Kaysville and say the same thing. So it's like, where do we draw the line between restricting a development because of traffic, and that's why there's traffic studies and things, and
Right.
maybe that's
No.
a logical question to have.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm concerned about the frequency of use, but I'm also concerned about that particular configuration. I mean, it is bad. It's bad without Mr. Puffer's use. And so.
What do you mean, that configuration?
Well, so, I mean, it's. You
The
can-
angle
of the road.
You have two big, almost blind turns, and then you have this other weird turn from Deseret. I mean, it's like.
So whatever the use would be, let's just say it was a single-family residential use. The real question is, and I don't know the answer to this, how much different is this from a single-family residential use?
Well, and the lawyer proffered evidence that it's going to be less than 10 per day, which is.
Andy said a
Residential
single-family
is 10
residential
per day.
use by traffic engineering standards is,
That will depend on when you count, because obviously when you're moving them in.
Right.
there's a
Sure.
matrix, but
Right.
when you're
Right.
talking about, you want to know what is it going to be while it's in its
Yeah.
actual use.
And,
Right.
and there's options. I mean, I don't know what it would be, whether it's a traffic light or a stop sign. I mean, there are mechanisms that can be put in place, and so that would be part of what I would hope we'd get out of a traffic study, is some recommendations that it can be, these concerns can be mitigated, but I just don't know if they can. ready for a motion? I'd be prepared to make a motion. I don't normally. Sure.
Dave Adams, if you don't mind, could I start right here? I'd like to take a poll. Mrs. Kamalo, how long have you known Jim Puffer or any of the Puffer? A one-by-one poll. Do we have relationships? I'd like to know. The public would like to know.
Not me.
Okay. To you, Mr. DeCare?
None.
Mr.
None.
Anderson?
I've never said a word in my life.
Okay, Mr. Wood?
I met him 2 weeks ago with the Planning Commission.
Okay, I said I'd be
0.
brief. Point number 2, the HOA who sold the property to Mr. Puffer was asked as they were going back there if there was a sweat equity deal along with cash to benefit the open space that the developer defaulted on. And it was stated as no. Well, that, I've talked with him now, and there was some sort of confusion there. That is true. So when we look at this HOA, when we talk about a petition being cherry-picked and invalid, if we're saying, well, why didn't you guys go up into this HOA? Well, because they want this, okay? But the city's not in the business of helping out HOAs. And the third point is, simply would add, Andy, right down there, just south of the current LI zone, okay? We all know where the storage units are, right? You guys are planning commission bodies, so how do I get on your agenda? The lot immediately south, Mr. Wood, you made a nice presentation on how, well, this is already connected to LI, and so did you, Mr. Sunlaw. So that lot immediately south, all that property, I was speaking with the owners of that property actually just yesterday. That first lot happens to be an acre, it's sizable, and it's kind of a little bit of wasteland. They haven't been selling very well. There's Questar who's coming in with a pump station. There's a cell tower. There's the storage units. You know, I know that the owners of that would love to add more storage units and would love to add multifamily. So that may be coming your way one day. But in the interim, you know, and given the spirit of this and the movement it looks like some of you are heading, I'd like to get on your agenda that we'd like to create a storage yard over there. We've got an excavation company looking for a home, and actually a couple other landscapers have now reached out to us looking for a home also. So I'd like to get that on your agenda and just have you keep that in mind, that if this is your feeling that this is okay, keep in mind that purple zone can grow. Thank you.
Apologize for dragging this out, but I'd like to correct the statement that was just made by Mr. Adams. The offer made by Jim Puffer to the Old Mill HOA was a full cash offer. The HOA decided to go back to Jim and ask if we could get a $20 line of credit for products for trees that we'd like to buy to implant in our parking strips and in the park area. And Jim agreed that he would be willing to do that to give us a line of credit. There is no sweat equity. Jim has offered to be able to sell us trees with a $20 line of credit.
$20?
Or it's 20,000, excuse me.
There you go.
Mr. Thompson had said we weren't addressing that, but since Mr. Adams brought it up, I'd just like to make that clear that there is no sweat equity agreement with Mr. Puffer.
Great, thank you. Okay. So I think before that interruption, I was about to say, normally the chair hasn't been making motions. I'd be happy to make one with respect to getting that traffic study, because that's where I am. I'm not going to recommend it without having a better sense that this is safe. That was my concern last time around, and it's still my concern, and obviously all these people here have expressed that similar concern. So unless somebody has a better motion, I'll move that we, I guess this would be a tabling, or we recommend it, we can move it, we can submit it to the council without a recommendation based on the desire for a traffic study?
I would.
After I say I'm going to do it, now here I am asking for help.
Trying to understand what you're trying to guess
I can
what you're
guess
saying.
too.
I would suggest that you table it pending the information that you want to make a better decision.
Was that more palatable or less palatable than just sending it to the council with our mixed vote and that concern? I think the this council, is a legislative concern.
I'd say we
I think that the council would be interested in that information. It's just adding to everything that's been discussed and shared here.
If we send it to the council, it'll get there before they can get any kind of study done. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Can the council then table this with our recommendation? Can we recommend they table it?
Until they see the study?
No.
Pending the study.
I like that one.
You need to send them, well, you have really 3 choices of what you can send to them. You approve it as proposed, you deny it, or you modify it and recommend it. So if you're not ready to make one of those recommendations, then the appropriate thing would be to table it, stating what information you need so that you can make a more clear decision. You don't want to just table it for the sake of delaying the process or whatever, but where you have information that you're looking for that will possibly alter your decision, I believe the appropriate thing would be to table it.
I mean, I'm tempted to...
How long would a traffic study take? We talking weeks, months?
Weeks, maybe a couple weeks, depending
And we'll
what
get that
information they
GPS
have that
language
they can provide to us.
Information.
So maybe, should we share whether that would influence any of the rest of our decisions?
Yeah, let's, a perfect traffic study, what information does it tell you? And then where would you fall depending on whatever the information is?
Well, for me, if a perfect study was done, I would know the increase in use that Mr. Puffer's use brings to the area, and how much, and that's basically the same question as how much of it's the city's use. And then the other part of it is this configuration safe? And I'm thinking it's not. And if there is, and is there a way that we can make it safe? Some entrance right there, right before the turn, can we mitigate the unsafe conditions such that it would be safe?
Would a typical traffic study answer those questions?
A typical traffic study will review the traffic pattern and the volume. It would be a different type of study that would look at the geometrics of the entrance and the roadway.
So we'd have to be, if we're going to get a traffic study, it would have to be specific as to what we want.
Tailored to what we want it for, you.
Yes.
It wouldn't influence my decision. For what it's worth, it would not.
No, it wouldn't. It would not influence mine either.
I think it would be interesting and maybe helpful to the council.
Yeah, I agree with that, but it wouldn't influence.
I think it may make us feel better about our decisions, but I don't know that it would change
So
them
then,
necessarily.
so if my motion would be, it's not recommended, I would say that it's not recommended unless a traffic study can either absolve us of our concerns or mitigate those concerns. And what some of you are saying is that
There's another concern.
no,
There's more concern, yeah,
not recommend.
than the traffic.
Unfavorable recommendation. All right, well then make that motion.
Okay. Is that what the rest of you?
Just one final question. A comment was, or a question was brought up about a traffic light. What standard do we have to reach to get a traffic light at that intersection, which I think probably the only thing we all agree on in this room is that that is a horrible intersection. I think I can get 100% on that one. What would we have to do to get a light there?
Which intersection, the driveway or Deseret?
No, not the driveway, just
Deseret.
for Deseret.
This
and
one?
Burton.
At the top of the hill?
Yes.
There are standards in it's called the Manual Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the MUTCD, based on the amount of traffic, both on the major street and the minor street. My instinct, without doing any sort of study, is that this is very well shy of meeting those criteria.
And I'm not an expert by any stretch, but it's not that it's one spot. There's 3 or 4 spots in that little, S curve that are the problem. And so I don't know how you fix it if it's even fixable, but it's not just one, it's not just Deseret to Burton,
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of mitigating factors here, blind corners.
Rail trail.
The trail is a
rail
big one.
crossing.
At a turn.
And the children going to school.
So my motion would be, I'm happy to take a competing motion, because I feel like there's more for your motion to not recommend, but my motion would be that we forward it to the council without a favorable recommendation, without unless there's a traffic study that can support it. But maybe your motion would be better, so make a motion if you have.
That one's fine for me.
I mean, the other option, it's the very similar option in my motion would be to say we table it, which is fine, but then again, we have another
Yeah, I don't think we need.
public hearing.
I don't think we need to go through that again.
This is a legislative decision. The city council has already had another, had a try at this.
They wanted us to hear the public comment.
Councilman Page, several months ago, we had a similar situation where we were kind of stuck, and he recommended kick it to the council.
Because they have to make the decision.
They have to make the decision. So I don't think it would be appropriate in this instance to table it based on a traffic study. Whether we're for it or whether they're against it, I think we give our opinions. We've talked it to death tonight. I think we kick it to the council and let our elected representatives make that decision based on our recommendation and what they've heard tonight from everyone. So, Lorena, if you want to give it a try, we'll vote on it.
Mine would simply be that I move that we, I have so many notes, that we deny the request to rezone 1.53 acres of property from R120, single-family residential, to the LI, light industrial zoning district for Jim Puffer at approximately 1450 South Burton Lane. And I'll say I to my own motion.
We have to have a second first.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Tom?
I'll second.
Okay.
Aye.
Nay.
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 Okay, that was interesting. All right, the motion fails, so we need another motion.
Well, I'd say we use yours.
Okay. So my motion is that we pass it, we not recommend, we send a unfavorable recommendation to the city council with the provision that there be a traffic study done to address the issues we've already mentioned. And so the city council has that in front of them and to be able to make their decision. I don't really like that motion, but.
I'm not sure I really understand that motion.
No, I don't either.
Andy looks confused.
I can tell Andy's confused, but he always looks at me that way.
I think the confusion is, at least it sounds like you're implying that you want a traffic study between now and when the city council ultimately decides on it, which means we won't get to see the traffic study. Is that,
right.
And you're okay? That's the intent of your motion?
That's right.
Okay.
Otherwise, it comes back to here, and we have another public hearing, not that you're.
Well, we don't have to do that, but we could, yeah.
Public hearing.
We
don't
could
have
just
to have the
discuss it
public
in
hearing.
light of
You
the
do not
traffic
have to have
study.
Since we already had it.
another public hearing.
We've had two.
It has to be another public meeting.
Right.
But at the chair's discretion, there doesn't have to be public comment.
Well,
Can't see that happening.
I think whether we call it a public hearing or not, I mean, we open it up to the public and they'll have a chance to comment on it. So the only question is, will there be notice such that you all will get it and show up again? And I think if there was adequate notice, they would show up again. So it would be, in effect, de facto another public hearing, which isn't the worst thing that could happen, but, you know, we've done that.
Yeah.
So I don't like my motion, but that's the way I think it shapes up, is we send it with a request for a traffic study, but.
Let me see if I understand it, and maybe that will help. You're recommending to not approve the rezone unless a traffic study indicates that there's no significant impact from this use?
Unless it's, right, well, one, that it's adding an entrance there with his kind of use, and we're going to have his information on use, is safe, or whether it can be made safe.
And so then if the traffic study shows, would have been in your opinion, that it could be made safe, what about the other concerns?
The non-traffic concerns?
Yeah.
So in my mind, I think the development agreement that we had talked about before makes this, that covers the aesthetics and makes it look better than it was. But if you want to add, I'm open to having the development agreement be increased to
if that's,
ensure that. But
if that's how you feel, my recommendation would be that you make a motion to approve the rezone subject to that traffic study. And then you can add the development agreement as well. But when you say, I think the confusion is when you recommend not to approve it unless it gets confusing.
yeah, I don't like that one though.
Well, then, okay, but hold on then. Then what you're saying is just flat recommend denial. Because if you're saying, what Andy is saying is if you recommend approval unless the traffic study shows something that you're not comfortable with, which means you then are saying you would deny it in that case.
I don't like the way that feels, but I'm going to do it. Because I think we need a motion to vote on. So I'm going to say I move that we recommend the approval of the rezone with the prior listed development agreement, which would include trees lining the exterior border and including the fence maintenance and put in place. So we're just going to use the conditions we put on it previously. And subject to a traffic study that focuses on the areas we discussed, including traffic and usage and count and
The access road.
access.
And the geometrics of the...
Right, of the configuration of the traffic and the road. If that study says that it can't be done, and it can't be done safely, then it should be an unfavorable recommendation.
I think at least one question I would have is that traffic study, I would guess, is going to just offer an opinion. It's not going to say this cannot be made safe. He's going to say, in our professional traffic engineer opinion, this is what we see, something along those lines.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anyway.
No, I agree, and
Can I clarify too?
reasonably safe, I mean, I don't know what the standard's going to be, but
Yeah.
I don't want to put my standard on it because I'm
Right.
not a traffic expert.
Um,
A favorable or disfavorable, unfavorable recommendation, I don't know.
And can I just clarify, you mentioned the previous development agreement, which is the one I think that we did last planning commission, right? That's one you're talking about?
Correct.
So I just want to clarify, are you saying vegetative buffer along the rail trail and then the other two, along Burton and then along Deseret? Is that what you were saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so
I'll second that motion.
I'll start it. Aye.
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 Nay.
Nay.
Okay. Well, I hope you can see we struggle with that. I think I've been the most inarticulate I've been in my history here at the Planning Commission. But the City Council, we have a representative from the City Council here. Obviously, they have access to what transpired here, and I think the City Council will understand our misgivings with either side of the recommendation. So hopefully you'll have a chance to, as a group, to get in front of the City Council, and they'll have our input, and it's going to come to them with some, I think, significant hesitation and concern.
And I think ultimately the desire is to have that property, one, be a good neighbor, and two, look a whole lot better. I think if those things could be addressed prior to the city council meeting, it would go a whole lot smoother. And make a lot
I can't remember if they have another public hearing.
They're not required to have a public hearing, no.
Right, yeah.
Just a procedural information. The city council has rescheduled their meeting for next Thursday to the following Tuesday. So it's June 6th, I believe, whatever the Tuesday is.
Correct.
I'll review what's happened with this meeting with the mayor and determine if this should be on that meeting, or postponed meeting.
Right, obviously the mayor controls the schedule,
Yeah.
but I think my recommendation is they wait until they can get the traffic study.
Well, and then that's that issue. They also prefer to have the development agreement a little more than just the recommendations, a little more solid language on that too. So just so the public's aware, it could either be a week from Tuesday or not. And I wish I had a better way to say that, but I don't know. So watch the agendas, feel free to call us. We'll do what we can to make sure people are aware of when that goes back to the city council, but I don't know all your phone numbers and.
Okay.
Can I make one more comment? So Councilman Adams raised what I would term the slippery slope argument, which I think was brought up before. And he'll get the last word at City Council, so I thought I would just throw in mine on his hypothetical agenda item that may be coming before us or may not. This property right here, I think, is what he was referring to. That property is different than this property, in my opinion. That property right there does not have a natural buffer like the one we just recommended approval does. It also is a very much more conducive, in my opinion, to a residential use. It's virtually square. A home can be built on it. It's not on Burton Lane, which is a more intense road than this road is. So it's different, and I would probably recommend denial of that application. Well, when you bring it forward, I'll recommend denial, yes. Even if you have your entire operation on it. I think my point, Dave, is every property's different. And I think you could probably appreciate that, and I'll let you get the next word in at the council meeting.
Okay. Do we have enough clarity that we can move on?
I believe so.
Great.
Just as a note, I was in touch with our IT staff. The mayor's asked that we stream these on our YouTube channel, so it is going, but it hits a maximum before it quits. And so he recommended we take a brief recess to reset it, and that way we can continue in case these next meetings or items take more than just a couple minutes apiece.
I think they might. We need a motion for an adjournment?
A brief recess, 3 minutes.
A brief recess.
That would have been so good if we could have adjourned, then we could have left.
Oh, right.
See,
Right.
Emery.
Nice try.
Not thinking.
Okay, so we'll have a brief, I'm gonna move that we take a brief recess, 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Shit, this is unprecedented.
This is, how does the city council do it?
You know, honestly, I hate